Good evening. I call the September 13th, 2022 City Council regular meeting to order. City Clerk Ben Lane, would you please conduct the roll call?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor David Ortega.
Present.
Vice Mayor Tom Durham.
Present.
Council members Tammy Caputi.
Here.
Betty Janik.
Here.
Kathy Littlefield.
Here.
Linda Milhaven. Here. And Solange Whitehead.
Here.
Acting City Manager Bill Murphy.
Here.
City Attorney Sherry Scott.
Here.
City Treasurer Sonia Andrews.
Here.
City Auditor Sharon Walker.
Here.
And the clerk is present. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. We have Scottsdale police officers Dustin Patrick and Sergeant Brian Heiner, as well as firefighter Jacob Dodge, should anyone need assistance. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Caputi.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I want to further announce that we have a Mayor's Constitution Day contest. All 1st through 12th graders in Scottsdale are eligible and can submit in various media. Sometimes it's a haiku, sometimes it's a painting, sometimes it's an illustration. So our deadline is this Friday, the 16th. So I encourage you to mention that to any of our young citizens. We continue to keep the people and country of Ukraine in the forefront of our thoughts. So I ask that we pause in silence as they fight for their survival, freedom, and democracy. Thank you. I do have a proclamation, which I will read, and then we'll go on to the city manager's report and other presentations. The proclamation which I have today is regarding Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. This is a national effort, and certainly all of the families involved, as well as the healthcare system that are so essential to pull families through this. Proclamation, whereas in the United States yearly, childhood cancer leads to the death of 1,780 precious children and 15,700 newly diagnosed cases per year, whereas 8 years is the average age of a cancer diagnosis in children, and there are approximately 40,000 children on active treatment at any given time, and whereas 2/3 of all childhood cancer patients will experience chronic and even life-threatening secondary effects from available treatments such as chemotherapy and radiation, meaning 600,000 childhood cancer survivors in the United States are forced to live with immunocompromised systems. Whereas the National Cancer Institute is the leading research, diagnosis, prevention, treatment, and rehabilitation center for childhood cancers, and whereas too many children are affected by this deadly disease, and more must be done to raise awareness and find a cure. Therefore, I, David D. Ortega, Mayor of Scottsdale, do proclaim September as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. I will add to that with our 2,600 city employees, we're also involved with this awareness program as a city. And as we move forward, certainly depend on our health system. At this point, I'll call on Acting City Manager Bill Murphy to provide the City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the council.
Tonight, we'd like to give you another update on the Fast Five, some of the cool things that are going on throughout the city, and it's highlighted here in the video. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Public Affairs Specialist Stephanie Hirata with 5 fast things happening around the city you need to know. Our number 5 spot this month goes to Scottsdale Public Library. Have you been carded yet? September is National Library Card Sign-Up Month, and Scottsdale Public Library wants to remind everyone that signing up for a library card is the first step on a path to lifelong learning. Share the love by encouraging your friends, family, and neighbors to get a card today. We'll host a celebration for library card holders in November. Number 4 highlights our Water Distribution Systems Improvement Program. The city is currently replacing the failing water line along Dove Valley Road between 56th and 67th Streets with new 12-inch ductile iron pipe. Work is complete between 56th and 60th Streets, and the remaining portion is expected to be finished next month. This project is just one of many investing in our Scottsdale. Hispanic Heritage Month is in our number 3 spot. Each year from September 15th through October 15th, we celebrate the histories, cultures, and contributions of Americans whose ancestors came from Spain, Mexico, Central and South America, and the Caribbean. Did you know the cowboy depicted in Scottsdale's city seal is based on a real person? Discover more about Gervasio Noriega, known to the locals as Harvey. Search his name at youtube.com/Scottsdale, Arizona to learn more. Number 2 is a salute to our Scottsdale veterans. The city is launching a new program to publicly thank veterans and military service members in the community. Banners featuring them will fly from the street light poles in Old Town during 2 weeks in November. The city asked residents to nominate individuals now through September 30th. Veterans, active duty service members, and members of the National Guard and Reserves who live in Scottsdale or are from Scottsdale are eligible for recognition. Visit scottsdaleaz.gov and search Salute to learn more and submit nominations. And our number 1 Fast 5 spot details tax dollars at work. Scottsdale's budget is the foundation for providing safe neighborhoods, beautiful park and open spaces, and delivering on the city's mission statement, simply better service for a world-class community. The city just released a new video to highlight different elements of the city's revenues and expenditures for fiscal year 2022-23. You'll find it on our website. Or for a deeper dive, visit scottsdaleaz.gov and search Budget to find the city's award-winning budget book, citizen-friendly annual reports, and more. And that's Scottsdale's Fast 5 for September. Thanks for watching.
Well, thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Mayor.
Go ahead. Next, we have a presentation by the Mcdowell Sonoran Conservancy. It's an update. Justin Owen is the Chief Executive Officer. Great to see you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. As the Mayor said, my name is Justin Owen. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Mcdowell Sonoran Conservancy, and I'd like to thank you for having us come present an update this evening. I'm excited to say that just like the other amazing partners the city has in Experience Scottsdale and Scottsdale Arts, I am hopeful that this is the first of many annual updates to come before the Council. While most people in the room know of the Mcdowell Sonoran Conservancy, I would like to start by briefly going over how we got here today. The Conservancy started as a grassroots community effort to save our Mcdowell Mountains, and stands today as an award-winning education and scientific research institution dedicated to the Mcdowell Mountains, the Greater Sonoran Desert, and Scottsdale's Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve. While our work today makes impacts far beyond the preserve itself, the preserve is today and always will be at the core of what we do. We're extremely proud to be the trusted guardian of the preserve and look forward to continuing that work for many generations to come. At our beginnings, we started our work as the residents and citizens championing and advocating for the creation of what is now the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve, whether it was by leading field trips to make sure that every child was talking to their parents about this amazing place, or by marching up and down Scottsdale Road with campaign signs during the tax votes. The Conservancy has been a partner with the city for over 30 years. We worked with the mayor and the city council to form the preserve in 1994 and served as the primary advocate for the two preserve taxes in 1995 and 2004. I can only imagine some people saying what a long way we have come from our beginnings to today, now caring for the preserve for the last 27 years under our agreement with the city. I want to call your attention to the photo in the lower right-hand corner of the screen as we thank the amazing visionaries who had the foresight to envision what is now the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve, our preserve pioneers. We definitely could not have accomplished this great feat without all of their hard work and dedication. Through our contract with the city, I'm very proud to let you know that what we've accomplished over the city's last fiscal year. Coming back from COVID, I'm happy to let you know that we have over 700 volunteer stewards providing services in the preserve, which resulted in over 61,000 hours of service and nearly $1.9 million in services in labor for the city, or the equivalent from working with the city auditor's office to almost 57 city staff. Also, through private contributions and our Conservancy staff, we've contributed an additional $1 million in services for nearly $3 million in savings for the residents and city of Scottsdale over the last year. Our team made contact with over 100,000 preserve users through our 10 programs throughout the preserve and our contacts with the Conservancy's 17 staff. This evening, we'll briefly walk through our 3 pillars of service, which are science, education, and stewardship. Our science conducts ecological research in the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve and throughout the desert that impacts arid and semi-arid environments. Our education programs focus on youth-targeted STEM and STEAM education in the classroom. Also, our adult and lifelong learners, we've learned that there are no older learners, they're lifelong learners. And our stewardship programs train and deploy volunteer stewards to care for the Mcdowell Sonoran Preserve and increase our outcomes throughout the city of Scottsdale. If there is one thing that has been present over our 30 years of service, it is education. As our founders and those pioneers knew, education is the greatest way to engage people. They used educational field trips to get families excited about the preserve before the preserve tax initiatives, and we continue to use education today to teach all generations that they have a role to play in protecting our natural open spaces. One of my greatest examples of education over enforcement is how many folks we engage with in the preserve where you say, you need to stay on the trails, because they say, that's the rules. And they go, okay, fine, whatever, leave me alone. But when you tell them, you need to stay on the trails because there was a family of rattlesnakes just down there, they come back on really quick. So education is one of our cornerstones. We provide our services for youth, adults, and our lifelong learners through in-person, place-based learning experiences, and through virtual online opportunities. Over the past few years, we've made an intentional pivot from creating mostly fun recreational activities for youth to delivering STEAM-based programs that meet and exceed Arizona State's and next-generation curriculum standards. Our youth education programs, Expedition Days, formerly what you see on your screen as the Junior Citizen Science Festival, is our flagship program. And while the in-person program had paused due to COVID, it's coming back this November at the Lost Dog Wash, where we expect to have over 1,000 elementary school students come through the program. And because the demand is so high, we're also going to be bringing it back in the spring for another 1,000 students to come through the program. To meet the needs of the teachers we partner with at the school district and the teachers themselves, we design the programs that they need. Our latest example is Bahada Explorers, where we partnered with the Scottsdale Unified School District to create a teacher cohort that we guided to develop a new program to help students catch up from lost learning during the pandemic. For this program, we brought the cohort of teachers to the preserve and taught them how to teach their curriculum in the preserve through place-based learning, and this resulted in 650 Scottsdale middle school students coming out and learning from their teachers, not just the Conservancy, at the Gateway Trailhead. As schools continued to face the new challenges, we adapted the school bus driver shortages that I know you have all heard of, as well as COVID still making it really tough for folks to come out and enjoy activities with us, caused us to create expedition days on the road. And that's where we take the learning stations you see in the preserve to the schools themselves, into the classrooms, and I'm proud to say we put 1,100 students through it in the last school year, bringing the preserve to the classroom. Considering the restrictions of the last year, we're very proud to say overall we put more than 5,500 students through our programs. And as you can see from the graphs on your screen, these programs are desperately needed. Pre-COVID, our preserve third grade student surveys showed us that nearly 75% of the students had never been to the natural desert. And after coming through the Conservancy's program in the preserve, over 99% of them said they were more likely to help protect it in the future. I don't know about you, but I believe third graders don't lie, so I'm willing to bet those are some pretty good statistics. You may have noticed on the previous slide a reference to something called living labs. And I'm excited to tell you it's advancing a lot faster than we had planned. We had initially planned to create living education labs at some of the trailheads where students could come out and conduct research themselves in the preserve. And I'm excited to say that Scottsdale Unified loved the idea so much, they've asked us to come build those living labs at some of the high schools here in Scottsdale. We also design our adult and lifelong learning models to build an interconnected curriculum under the umbrella that everything is connected and always changing. This helps our adults, including stewards, understand our ecosystem. And while historically we've held these lectures exclusively at the Mustang Library, we are now building out these opportunities not only for them in the preserve, but also at multiple libraries throughout the city and other city facilities, including our senior centers. We're also identifying community venues such as the Museum of the West in different areas of Scottsdale so we can engage different parts of our community with no barriers to attend and enjoy the preserve. For our preservation work, we have advanced from our very small beginnings to our two longest standing priorities of restoration and biodiversity. We use leading edge scientific techniques to engage citizens in our work in the preserve and in their own communities around the preserve. Excuse me, we give them things they can do in their own communities, down to the things they can do in their own yards to protect the preserve that they might be up against or other parts of the city. We work to remove and eradicate non-native plants and partner with the city to apply for grants to fund other city services like fire mitigation through the Scottsdale Fire Department. We also monitor key species to help protect biodiversity and the preserve, and to maintain our unique ecosystem. Our migratory and movement studies that you'll see up here with mule deer and Sonoran desert tortoise show us the balance that can be had between humans, responsible development, and areas of nature like the preserve. Our work continues to expand beyond the preserve, and a lot of folks might ask why. History tells us that we can't live in silos and hope for the best. But by working inside and outside of the preserve, we have a much greater benefit to the preserve. First, our funding only allows us to monitor a small subset within the preserve, and we know that we must have greater collaborations to share our findings and leverage others' findings to benefit the preserve. Secondly, we can't look at it in isolation. To give the examples we use of removing invasive species within the preserve, we could do as much as we can within it, but if we don't work with our neighbors in the county park, the Tonto National Forest, and around, humans and fauna and wind can bring it right back in. So I'll touch briefly on just the work that we're doing for Scottsdale to put us on the map for other areas around the country and the world. The work that we're doing right now with Intel and the Scottsdale Fire Department is on the forefront of technology and invasive fuel identification and has enormous potential value for our work. We have partnered with Intel and the fire department to build out technology that can identify and map invasive species not only in the preserve, but the communities around it. So briefly on to our partners. You see these folks that are up on your screen here. We're able to leverage the resources and assets they have to bring to the city and the preserve to take care of it. As well, our stewards provide the opportunities to take care of the preserve, but also teach our community members how to take care of it. And I am very happy to say that we recognize back when the preserve was just a vision that everyone has a voice, and we are very supportive of what our future looks like. We've spent 30 years with the city partnering, and we can't wait for the many more generations to come. We look forward to partnering with the Protect and Preserve Scottsdale Task Force to look at the solutions to maintain the preserve for many years to come, and we are very excited for the opportunity to present to the council tonight. So I'll go ahead and close with what I know the mayor has seen before. It's one of the core values that we look at when looking at what we do, and it's a Native American proverb that serves to remind us all of what we should all think about when we consider the preserve and our natural open spaces future, as we want it to be here long past us. And that proverb states, we do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. So I thank you for your time, Mayor and council members, and I'm open to any questions you have.
Well, outstanding update. And obviously, we want to convey our thanks and appreciation to your board and the stewards and your diligent work. We rely on your sound advice. So let's give them a big hand. Thank you. I don't see any hands up for questions, so again, appreciate your work. Next, we will open public comment. Public comment is an opportunity for Scottsdale citizens to step forward and bring an item before council. It should not be an agendized item. If it is an agendized item, you can speak when that item comes forward. So we are open to public comment for any unagendized item which would be within the council's jurisdiction. Because it's brought forward, there's no action to be taken on those items. And of course, the speakers have an opportunity to come forward, state your name, address, and speak for 3 minutes. At this time, we have one speaker. Oh, excuse me, we have two speakers. So I'll ask Dinah Smith, please come forward. Appreciate you being here.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you so much for letting me stand before you again. That's a tough act to follow, Justin. Nice job. The reason I come before you is because over the past while, I've noticed a deterioration of some of the things in Scottsdale. We're spending a lot of time and energy trying to make our city beautiful. I support that. I think it's great the more we work, but there's some other things that need to be looked at. I'm talking about street signs that are bubbling. I can give you addresses, mostly along Scottsdale Road, between here and Lincoln. I noticed street light poles that are rusted and deteriorating, Chaparral, on the way between Pima and the city, downtown Hayden. We've got traffic poles that are rusted or peeling. We've got other street signs that just really do not show us well. I'm mostly concerned because it's in our downtown area. We've got the Super Bowl coming, and I really want our city to shine. And I think if we can do a preserve like we've done, I believe we could get a paintbrush out and do a little bit of this. I've got one other while I'm here I'll mention. We honored the high school site by having these pillars at the corner of Miller and Indian School, these columns. And these columns really always are peeling. They really are not well maintained. I don't know whose responsibility it is, Mayor. I don't know that we can't just go out there, and I'd rather not see them at all than to see that kind on our main street, which is Indian School Road. So with those comments, I really appreciate you listening to me, but I think we can all do a little better, and I do have a paintbrush at home, so I'm willing to help too. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Barney Gonzalez.
My name is Barney Gonzalez. I'm a volunteer with the city of Scottsdale, although I'm talking tonight as a person in the general community. The thing I'm talking about tonight is water. And the reason I'm bringing that up forward is that because I've been to a couple open houses for large developments in the recent history in the last year. The problem is that when one of the things that's an agreement of most people who seem to follow the water issues and everything, from the Arizona commissions, the Corporation Commission, to the CAP commissioners, they have basically said that about 80% of our landscaping is of our water usage. Now, I don't know, we can interject anything we want as far as numbers, but whatever it is, it seems to be a very large number. I would like to see possibly an application or permits when the developers are bringing these permits forward, whether it be private residences, but mostly commercial properties. I would like to see an assertion of what their expected water usage would be in landscaping. At the open houses, the explanation has normally been, well, we're going to zero-scape things. Well, even the best zero-scaping manipulates water. The bubblers and the systems are all rated at GPM, but it's also about how long is the watering? What is it watering? Is zero-scaping always the best answer, or is there other things that we can use? We like having trees and shade detail in the downtown area. However, sometimes we don't have to use trees or trees that require much water. We can use other shade canopies or other type of effects as far as architectural details into the design. So I guess to get to the point is I'm asking if we could find some way of optimizing our requirements as far as the water usage in landscaping, like the city of Las Vegas, which is now implementing such a system. So in other words, I'd like to see something done more so that we can get a handle on basically what the water usage will be so we can plan. I like the word stewardship, and that's what you guys do here at the city council level. You are our stewards. You can see where we're going with this and see if there's a possibility of maybe doing some action at a later date. Thank you.
Well, thank you. At this point, I would close public comment. Next, we will have the approval of the minutes and ask if there are any revisions. So I would request a motion to approve regular meeting minutes of August 22nd, 2022, and regular meeting minutes and work study session minutes of August 23rd, 2022. Do I have a motion and a second?
Yes, a motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Thank you. Please record your vote. Thank you. That's unanimous. The next part of our agenda is the consent agenda items, 1 through 16. These are all posted and have all the details pertaining to each item. We also have a request from Councilwoman Milhaven to pull item number 16 to the regular agenda, so we will do so on item number 16. It relates to the Protect and Preserve Task Force, I believe. We also have an opportunity for the public to comment on any of the consent agenda items, and I do not see any. I also am calling attention here to Councilwoman Whitehead, either a comment or what question do you have?
Yeah, I have a comment. I just want to point out I want to thank Erin Perot. I don't think she's here, but there are 2 abandonments on this consent agenda, and that is always a concern for residents. They are being replaced with trail easements, so I just want to point that out for the record. And that would be items 4 and 5. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, at this point, I would close. There's no other public comment on any of the consent items. Therefore, I would ask for a motion for consent items 1 through 15. A motion?
So move.
Okay, so
Second.
you're moving to approve?
To approve.
Okay, I hear a motion to approve and a second consent agenda items 1 through 15. Please record your vote. Thank you. It's unanimous. Next, we will move on to a presentation on our regular agenda. In this case, it would be item number 16. So we will have the...
Mayor, I don't need a presentation. I just wanted to remove it for a separate vote, and I'd like to make a comment. Unless others would like a presentation, I don't need a presentation.
Okay. Thank you. It has been moved to a regular agenda. Does anyone want a full presentation? Okay. Appears none. So, Councilmember Milhaven, again, we will not need a full presentation on the item. And you had a comment?
Yes, thank you. And I also pulled it for a separate vote because I don't need a presentation because the staff is bringing back the product from a work study that we've fully addressed, but I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First is I'm really pleased to see that this item includes the potential for this task group to discuss a broad range of needs across our community. I think Justin did a great job of showing us that it's not just about acquiring land and maintaining the physical asset of our preserve, but how important education is to the preserve. And so I think our needs are much broader than simply maintaining and preserving. And I also hope that the conversation would talk about sort of what role the Conservancy plays in the future and how we might support them. And we have other important partners who support us in the arts and support us with tourism, and I would like us to consider the Conservancy as an equal partner, and I think the work they do in the sciences is also very important. I think arts and culture needs to be at the table, and I know public safety is also in here, so I think we need to open, I'm glad to see that we're going to open the conversation to consider broad community needs. I'd like to challenge us to think about what's the next big idea. What I do object to, though, is the council had agreed that this would be a council-appointed commission or task group of 9 people. And I have concerns about that. I had hoped that this group would follow the example we used with the short-term rental task group, where the city council identified important constituencies that we thought we needed to be at the table. Folks made application, and then staff picked from that. Because by doing it as a council appointed, it excludes folks who are not residents of the city of Scottsdale, which means important community leaders or business owners who don't live in Scottsdale could not participate. And I also think it needs to be broader than the 9 folks. And I also believe that if we're really going to listen to our community, we need to have broader community input. I think that having a task force that's appointed by the city council really sort of begs the outcome and taints the outcome to say, did the council stack the task force with people to give them the outcomes that they wanted? And so my preference would have been a broader task force with broader representation that was not appointed by the city council. So I will not be supporting the vote tonight. Thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Janik.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. However, I had problems with the way the membership was chosen for the General Plan Committee. And I feel there was what you're concerned about, there was undue influence of certain parties when we work with the general plan, and that is why City Council assumed that responsibility, and that was a great responsibility. My preference is that we have the applicants and we get to choose. We are 7 individuals. I know we probably all want different people to represent the different aspects of the city, and I would prefer that council had that ability to perform that task. Now, I do agree that we need to get really strong, robust input from our community, because this is a huge community asset, and everybody has a part in it. Everybody's been paying sales tax. So I do agree that we need to come up with a very strong program to get input from all sectors of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yes, it's always tough to make these decisions. I think we did the right decision, so I motion to adopt resolution number 12532 to authorize the formation of the Protect and Preserve Scottsdale Task Force, consisting of 9 members appointed by the council, who shall be Scottsdale residents representing different geographical areas, north, central, and south of the city, using the geographical map created by or for the council districting process discussion. Number 2, the Protect and Preserve Scottsdale Task Force to develop a recommendation to the council on a financial strategy to protect and preserve Scottsdale's open spaces and quality of life through identifying and quantifying the underfunded or unfunded needs for the protection, preservation, and perpetual maintenance of the city's open spaces. Number 3, the city treasurer to provide relevant staff and meeting space to assist the task force in formulating its recommendations and report. 4, the dissolution of the task force without further action when the council makes a decision on whether, my iPad is not cooperating, makes a decision on whether to send the sales tax question to the voters unless otherwise directed by the council.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to second that motion. I think that the council is the one that should be doing this and be responsible for the results of it. So I would second that. And I agree with Betty Janik's comments.
Thank you. I also agree and support the resolution. And by the way, no one is precluded, whether someone is a seasonal resident or a business owner outside of the city limits, to present any viewpoint in a public. One of the beauties of creating this task force, we will adhere to all the open meeting laws, and that's a proper above board way to transact things. Everyone is welcome to speak, just as people are welcome to be stewards of the preserve from any part of the country, even if they're here half the year. So there's no obstruction of in any way. Once again, Councilmember Milhaven.
I knew I was in the minority. I just wanted to get my 2 cents. Councilmember Whitehead, in reading the motion, point 2, you skipped over the last point that said public safety and other needs. Was that your intention?
No, it was not. My iPad, I guess, it kept popping up a screen on me. Which item did I?
At number 2, you finished number 2, you said perpetual maintenance of the city's open spaces, and it goes on to say public safety and other needs, which you omitted.
Yes, can you add that, and I have to get back to it.
Thank you.
Thank you for correcting me. Thank you.
And for clarification, it is the full resolution number 12532. So any other further discussion? Seeing none, please record your vote. So we have a 5-2 with Ms. Caputi and Milhaven dissenting. Thank you. At this point, we will move forward with the agenda regular item number 17, the Osborne Residential Healthcare Facility Rezoning and Conditional Use Permit, case number 1ZN 2014, number 2, and 17 use permit UP 2021. The presenter is Brian Clough, Scottsdale's principal planner. Hello.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Durham, and council members. My name is Brian Clough with the city's current planning department. I'll be giving you a brief overview of the Osborne Residential Healthcare Facility. As you mentioned, cases 1ZN 2014 number 2, as well as 17 UP 2021. And there's several action items associated with the request this evening, so I'll try to summarize the items 1 through 4 on the screen here. So the main request is adopting Ordinance 4560, and that's related to a zoning district map amendment that would be not to change the zoning district designation, but to amend the existing development plan from a prior case and associated zoning stipulations. And that's for the intent to allow the development of a residential healthcare facility that would have approximately 247 beds, including both minimal and specialized care, and then also approximately 9,900 square feet of commercial floor area. The request does include 8 feet of bonus height, and it's on 3.59 acres. Second has to do with the development plan associated with that request. And then item number 3 is specific to a conditional use permit, which the residential healthcare facility is a permitted land use in the existing zoning district, subject to a conditional use permit. And then lastly, adoption of Resolution 12580 associated with the development agreement with the zoning case. The subject site we're looking at this evening is on Scottsdale Road in Osborne, highlighted in yellow here, west of Scottsdale Road and south of Osborne. Here's a closer look at the subject site. The existing development is the Olive Garden restaurant. South of that is the Carter Apartments that was also part of the original plan block development request back in 2014. This is the existing zoning map identifying the site with downtown multiple use type 2 with the plan block development and the downtown overlay. And this is the location of the subject site relative to the Old Town land use map. Towards the bottom of the map, you can see it highlighted in yellow there under the downtown multiple use designation. And then this map here is the Old Town development types. Same location towards the bottom of the map in blue. You can see it is within a type 2 area. And I'll also note here, it may be hard to see with the colors, but it does border the downtown boundary on the west end of the site. This is the proposed site plan for the development with Osborne Road to the north. And I'd like to point out that there's 2 separate masses to the building. You can see the assisted living to the west and independent living to the east. And those are separated by a second level open space courtyard area. A couple other things to point out here is extensive landscaping along the street frontages. There are covered shaded sidewalks along Osborne as well as Scottsdale Road. And then there is a public pedestrian path that will be going in along the south side of the development between the new building and the proposed Carter. This will have public access over it and will have enhanced landscaping and hardscape elements and includes approximately 12,000 square feet of public open space that will be part of the development. Here's a closer look at the site with the ground level plan overlaid. Access points to the building are provided from Osborne Road through a single driveway and a single driveway on 71st Street to the west. Ground level parking is behind the main building masses as well as another level below grade. And then the commercial portion of the development is proposed right here along the corner at the frontage of Osborne and Scottsdale Road. These are the conceptual building elevations associated with the approval. The top building elevation is the south, the north elevation towards the bottom. The overall building height is 74 feet to the highest part. That would be to a small area of the building here of a mechanical area. The main mass is at 68 feet at the tallest portion here. And then you can see it steps down as it goes to the west towards that downtown boundary with the main mass of that western portion of the building at 56 feet in height. And you can see the additional building step back provided along that downtown boundary which is consistent with the Old Town Plan and the zoning, the downtown zoning district. And then here on the top, the east building elevation, and on the bottom, the west. And here a rendering, conceptual rendering of the proposed building from the intersection of Scottsdale Road and Osborne. Along with the request are a proposal for site development standards. The applicant is requesting to maintain the existing development standards that were approved with the original plan block development. The only change associated with that would be for the bonus building height, and that's for the 8 feet of bonus height that would go from 66 feet of the base height to 74 feet. The original plan back in 2014 did include amendments to the building locations and prevailing setbacks that are proposed to be carried forward with this request. And getting more specifically into the conditional use permit request, this is a look at the ground floor and second floor plan of the proposed building. The upper level floors are very similar to this, but it just shows a little bit of the layout here and how the units within the building are going to be laid out. And specific to the conditional use permit, the evaluation by the council is based on the conditional use permit criteria up on the screen here. A and B being the general criteria applicable to all conditional use permits and generally addressing impacts to public health, safety, and welfare. Item C is specific to residential healthcare facilities and addresses specifics regarding the number of beds and density associated with that, which the maximum for specialized care is 100 beds per acre, and maximum for minimal care is 50 beds per acre, both of which this application complies with. Neighborhood outreach up to this point, staff and the applicant did send notices to property owners within 750 feet. The applicant also held open house meeting on November 18th of 2021. Additionally, the information regarding the request was posted on the city's website. I'll correct to this last point here regarding no public comments. We have received several public comments in support since it went to the Development Review Board and has moved forward from Planning Commission to City Council. We have not received any comments in opposition or concern. The request did go before our Development Review Board on June 16th of 2022 and recommended for approval 6-0, as well as the Planning Commission on August 24th, also recommended for approval with a vote of 7-0. And I'll end here on this slide just re-summarizing the requested action this evening. That concludes staff's presentation, and the applicant is also here with the presentation prepared. I'll be happy to answer any questions for staff. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no hands up, so at this point we will go to the applicant.
I'm organizing. Sorry, it's a little messy up here. I don't know who was up here last, but Mayor, before I begin the clock, or you begin the clock on me, I just have a quick question before I begin my formal presentation, and that is, are there any requests to speak from the public on this item?
There were no questions, hands up at this point, so we're going to
No, but nothing from the public at this point.
From the public,
Okay.
No, there
Okay.
weren't any. We are in receipt of the other memos and so forth that were
Thank
sent
you.
to us. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Mayor, members, Vice Mayor, members of the council, for your record, John Berry, 6750 East Camelback Road in Scottsdale. And a little interesting fact about Old Town and senior living. There's been no new senior living built in Old Town in decades. Now, what's changed? Now, Old Town is an amenity-rich environment that attracts residents of all ages. And you know what? As recently as Saturday, you can count on the fact that they're going to keep coming. In fact, Scottsdale was ranked number 7 in the country for top 10 places to retire in the United States. Now, speaking of the general plan earlier, The general plan spent a great deal of time and focus on ensuring that our senior citizens are able to age in place and to address their needs. The housing element of the general plan also talked about encouraging senior living close to health and community services. Well, how did we do with this site in conforming with that general plan document? There are a plethora, a multitude of opportunities for recreation, civic involvement, and volunteerism at this site. Literally right across the street is Honor Health. And you can see the community amenities that are within easy walking, trolley, or distance from the transportation provided for folks who choose to live here. What about the existing condition, kind of boots on the ground? You saw the staff, it's got the aerial photo, but what's it look like boots on the ground? On the bottom left here is our site outlined in green. You can see these stunningly beautiful, almost 2 acres of black asphalt and this Olive Garden restaurant in the middle of the site. Across the street to the north is the aesthetically pleasing Walgreens drive-through. Kitty corner is the Honor Health parking lot, and across the street, across Scottsdale Road, is a convenience store and gas station. Immediately south of the convenience store and gas station is a Denny's. That is an amenity that is very important. But this proposal will certainly upgrade the intersection. Now, staff did note in their presentation and in the staff report that the zoning category, the existing zoning category here is not changing. It's not changing. So back in 2014, the application was approved that would allow up to 539,000 square feet of building on this site. What are we requesting? A 50% reduction from that. Staff also spent some time in their presentation and extensively in your council action report regarding the site plan. I want to stress one thing that staff talked about. We are not requesting any amended development standards for this height. No request to modify the required setbacks or stepbacks for this proposal. This will certainly be an improvement from the existing use of the Olive Garden. Now, currently, speaking of the Olive Garden, on the site is a 9,300 square foot Olive Garden with the asphalt parking lot we discussed. What will that be replaced with? It will be replaced with about 14,000 square feet of restaurant, office, and retail on the street level, with outdoor dining, patios, and a continuous solid shade structure going around the building, and a public paseo, which staff talked about briefly. I think the public paseo deserves a little bit more time. As you can see, here's Scottsdale Road, here's Osborne, and here is the public paseo with a public plaza at the heart of it. This is a very unique feature. It is meaningful public open space in our old town. It's approximately 12,000 square feet of meaningful public open space. This is a little vignette of what the paseo could look like. Scottsdale Road would be at the bottom here. This is the restaurant that wraps all the way around into the paseo along Scottsdale Road and turns the corner all the way down Osborne for that restaurant. This is the entrance to the paseo where we will spend our 1% for the public art, where it will be well landscaped, there'll be shading, lighting, and it will be a true community amenity. Now, what about the pedestrian in this area in addition to the paseo? This is the existing pedestrian condition on Osborne looking west. Over here is our site. This is an incredibly attractive and conducive to pedestrian activity on this particular frontage, as you can see. What we will be replacing it with is landscaping, then an 8-foot sidewalk, and then a continuous shade overhang and outdoor dining along the edge of it. This will create activity and energy that isn't there today. So speaking of energy, our architectural team has a great deal of energy and a great deal of experience in Scottsdale, led by Doug Sidnor, who is sitting in the front row. They have produced for you a quality building with quality materials for this particular location. This is Scottsdale Road on the left over here. Osborne would be down here on the right. You can see the shade canopy, the shade trees, the outdoor dining, and again, that will turn the corner, go all the way down Scottsdale Road, and turn the corner again on the paseo. Now, what about height for this particular project. We're asking for 8 additional feet. Why? And where are we asking for it? The why is because there's been no new senior living built in Old Town for decades, and there's a huge unmet demand for it. We need room for the beds. There is a true demand for this service in our Old Town. Now, this, as staff mentioned, this project reads as 2 different buildings or masses. This is the memory care and assisted living at 56 feet. Staff also mentioned that the independent living portion of the project, which again reads as a separate mass of a building, that independent living to the top of the roof, which is how we used to measure height in Old Town, is 68 feet. We are asking for that 74 feet in order to allow a solar array on the rooftop and to accommodate this very small area of an elevator overrun. So that additional area is for mechanical equipment and solar array. What about traffic? Now recall that the underlying zoning is not changing here. This is not a request to change the zoning category. That zoning is there. And when you compare the existing zoning that's permitted on this site with what we're proposing with the senior living, obviously senior living generates a lot less traffic than other types of uses. And you can see the difference in the reduction in the traffic vehicles per day that are generated by these uses. Now, it sounds funny to say this because we've focused a lot on parking with multifamily development. But because we're putting in a restaurant, and we're having negotiations with 2 very serious parties who want this restaurant space, both of them insisted that we have enough parking conveniently located to that restaurant off the street where they could pull in, and we're accommodating that. In fact, we will be overparked by 21% or 59 spaces. Top of mind for all of us, as Commissioner Gonzalez talked about in his comments, public comments, is water conservation. Through stringent conservation and utilizing new technology, there will be a 35% reduction in total water use compared to this project without those new technologies and conservation efforts, and a 45% reduction in outdoor use. Again, as Commissioner Gonzalez said, most of our water, 70 to 80%, is used outdoors. Now, on your agenda later, this work-study session, is this ASU collaboration with the City of Scottsdale to talk about the heat mitigation efforts that the city can make. These are the 3 recommendations verbatim that came out of that report. And we check every one of those with this project, absolutely every one of them. So we studied that draft when it came out a while ago, and we have implemented them. Mayor, members of the council, in conclusion, what are some of the community benefits that we have here? We're going to transform this soon-to-be vacant building and expansive asphalt into senior housing, a public paseo with public art. It meets that general plan need and market need, large unmet demand for senior living to age in place in Old Town. It provides a continuum of care. Again, no request for amended development standards, no change in the existing zoning category, a 50% reduction in building square footage, a height request, yes, of 8 feet, but only on one small portion of the building, 4 predominantly solar arrays. It generates less traffic, and we are taking care of the pedestrian. We implement the city's sensitive design principles in urban design and architectural guidelines. This is an investment of $85 million in this part of Old Town. $85 million. That's a lot of jobs and a lot of revenue to the city. We are overparked. We are serious about reducing the urban heat island effect. We're going to remove, this is lawyer math now, I apologize, I don't mean Mr. Durham would do this, or Councilmember Durham would, Vice Mayor Durham would do this, but we're going to remove almost 2 acres of asphalt here. We're adding trees. 42 trees will be here when we're done, 48-inch box trees, 180% increase in trees. We create public, meaningful public open space with that paseo. We implement the general plan for the very important constituency of those that want to age in place in our community. And the general plan focused on that. This is an important step in doing that. We do have community support. We're not aware of any opposition to this proposal. The Development Review Board, as staff noted, was unanimous in the recommendation for approval, and Commissioner Gonzalez, who spoke earlier, was the Planning Commission member representative. The Planning Commission then granted unanimous recommendation as well to you to approve this case as is. I see I'm a few seconds over. Mayor, members of the council, I appreciate your time. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Berry, I will lead off with a question and then some discussion. You pointed out that the 2014 project included the Carter, I believe, and also it had shown two parcels, Site 1 and Site 2. The Olive Garden site was shown unchanged at that time. And then tonight you mentioned that the case involved something like 575 square feet. Was that inclusive of both Site 1 and 2 or just the Carter site?
Mayor, members of the council, this case, the staff report does note that the number 1 case back in 2014 had a permitted square footage, hold on, let me get to it, of 539,700 square feet, and we were at half that number. So that 539,000 square feet would include, in addition, potential 68 residential units that could have gone here, as well as the additional square footage that was carried over for the entire site.
So just so I understand, that included the Carter as well as potentially 62. So when the Carter got built out, I don't know what that area is specifically, but so was that the aggregate to 535 for that site that you cited tonight, and then you compared the Osborne to the 535 or 575?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, members.
Which is correct. I mean, I'm trying to clarify whether you're comparing to the gross when 2/3 of it's already been built out.
Mayor, members of the council, Vice Mayor, that site transferred from the Carter the right to build the square footage for office or other uses on the Carter was transferred to this site in addition to the rights that this site has. So it got both the square footage that on the Carter site and their underlying square footage here. In return, this site, that's the subject of the request this evening, transferred their residential density to the Carter. So there are two baskets of how you look at what can happen on the property. One basket is residential density, and they're separate, and another is square footage for non-residential. So the residential potential on this site was transferred over to the Carter, and the Carter's potential for square footage of non-residential was transferred over to this site. So legally and from a zoning perspective, this site has the ability to build 539,000 square feet of non-residential on this site.
Okay, so you were comparing the residential to the commercial discussion with the transfer. I can move on from that question. It just sort of answered me. Okay, my colleagues have this handout, and it will be a PowerPoint to begin the discussion on this project. First of all, every site in the Old Town character area has a context. And the context that I'm showing here is the Carter project, which is directly south. And I am referencing the context, which we used to call the prevailing average setback. In other words, as you drove up Scottsdale Road, we're used to seeing buildings at a certain setback. And in this case, the Carter, the actual setback is 32 feet from the back of curb. On the slide to the right, you'll see the opportunity for an outdoor patio. In this case, happens to be enclosed at the Carter. So that activates the street for the residential use there. The proposal that we're looking at asks for only a 20-foot setback on Scottsdale Road. So I am speaking of the Scottsdale Road let's just say, constriction of Scottsdale Road or a valley sort of effect. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here you'll see where the setback actually of the mass of the Carter is at 36 feet from the back of curb. And you'll see sort of in the center area where an outdoor patio is provided for the residents of the Carter. So in actuality, this massive vertical massing is situated 36 feet from the back of curb. And if you consider what a 20-foot back of curb, just looking at this slide alone, you could see that where the fire hydrant is approximately, that's probably about 15 feet. And the height of that building would start just a little to the left of that fire hydrant in the proposed Osborne project. The amenity of having a outdoor seating or patio is one of the amenities that we encourage in the Old Town Character Area Plan by having outdoor seating. And again, I'm sort of referencing what's happening or proposed for the Osborne, where I believe there's a restaurant opportunity on that corner. But again, they've constricted the pathway from the back of curb substantially in their proposal. And essentially, they're losing an opportunity, as we would say, to activate the street. Let's go to the next slide. Now, this is the actual construction drawing, which shows the Carter. There happens to be a bus stop there. So the curb, as you're walking north from the Carter, is constricted. You see that line that says 20 feet, that sort of hard dashed line. That's 20 feet back from the curb, which is the part that's straight before it recesses about 13 feet for the bus stop. So the line of the proposed Osborne jogs east and really has more of a blockage effect as they have proposed it. If you look further, you'll see that sort of down the sheet a bit, you'll see where there's sort of some squares. That's actually an outdoor patio that I mentioned in those photographs. I took the photographs, so I know what it, because I was interested in, again, how we can activate the street. Going to the next slide, this is the Griffin. The Griffin, the setback, back of curb, is actually 39 feet 8 inches, almost 40 feet. It is a successful build out. It's not associated with the case 2014. By the way, I don't think you were the attorney for this one, and I just say that in terms of 40-foot setback, you can start to see a lot more space that we would relate to, especially at a corner site like the Osborne has. There is, as I mentioned, what's called a prevailing average setback. Prevailing average setback is where the building occurs, okay? It's not just the setback of where an imaginary line is. That's the minimum of all measurements. The prevailing building setback average is 40 feet, 40 feet along Scottsdale Road. In some cases, it's 60. They're proposing 20, which is an absolute minimum, in my opinion. So here you can see a rhythm where, and actually part of this setback is used by those residents to park bikes, and it has some sort of a softening effect. Let's look at the next slide. Now here we have a illustration again of an opportunity where the Griffin has it's actually a 39-foot. The setback says 20 feet, but they used almost a 40-foot setback. If you look at this and picture it, you will also get an idea of what the corner could look at Osborne and Scottsdale Road, rather than the more constricted corner, which is proposed in the submittal. At this point, I'd also turn to the next slide. So as you, here you'll see the looking east towards the hospital across Scottsdale Road. You'll see those three rocks, or two rocks on the screen wall. That would be the corner of where the 20-foot marker is. And if you look at the right-hand picture, you'll see how close that corner is. Again, measured 20 feet from the back of curb. And you'll also notice the control box for that intersection is right where that corner is of the building. So essentially, if you were walking north from the Griffin, you would have a pretty ample walkway, and then it changes to 32 foot, and then they're proposing a much more constricted setback. Now, this is new construction, and they haven't asked for, you know, height and density and meeting certain criteria. But what I want to point out is that there is a substantial loss of opportunity here by crowding a very important corner. This corner, if you look at it, is also where we suspend the banners that say, "Welcome to Old Town," or "Rodeo Happening," and so forth. So if you're imagining a tall building or the corner of the building going vertical at that point, then we have an interruption and a narrowing for no reason. If it were set back to the average, which would be 40 feet, it could easily accommodate activating the street by having an outdoor patio, which is always requested by any restaurant. They would want that. And it also is our duty, in the general plan, which we state pretty directly, that activating the street, certainly the patrons who live there or residents who live there would have a on-grade opportunity to have an outside, to meet up with somebody and so forth at that corner. So context is very critical. When we look at having to jog and then maneuver around this area, it is very limiting. And if you look beyond on the right-hand picture, you'll see where the Walgreens is, and that is approximately almost 60 feet, say 55 feet. There's a building that you'll see on the lower right-hand corner. So, you see the openness, you see the promenade of in this case, palm trees, but, constricting at a gateway to our city and Old Town is counterproductive as I see it. There's many other, let's see, I think I have one more slide. Okay, now that's again showing how this corner where the two stones are comes very much forward. It jogs. You can see the Carter beyond, but it jogs forward substantially, and it causes, let's just say, too much of an urban hard edge when at every corner our general plan and guidelines call for softening of that. Now, there's many things to like about this project. I met with you all about 6 months ago when we talked about covered shaded walkways, and that was done and accomplished. Again, we kind of went silent for a little while. I'm giving you my criticism here because, for instance, the view that you have on Osborne is a much more substantial setback. And it makes sense. It looks and feels better along Osborne, and I have no objection to that. I think it's successful. But when you look at this part, it's not just the senior or person that needs special care that's going to be a resident. Everyone that drives north on Scottsdale Road is going to say, "Whoa, what happened?" Wow, I've got something that's kind of extreme coming and forcing me between the street light and the control, and I've got to kind of maneuver that. That is in my opinion, I have no problem with the use. I have no problem with the two types of care. I am also, I would be supportive of the resolutions and the use permit, but with the stipulation that at the Scottsdale roadside, that it take the average of 40 feet so that it would step back there, and so that we wouldn't have to delay otherwise we're accepting a site plan, but I don't want to go on record accepting something that's so intrusive on our identity and our key road. It's something that we would never see, at the Galleria or other buildings that just come right directly. So I will be making, a motion with that stipulation. There's no, that I believe could be handled. But let me move on to Councilmember Millhaven and then Vice.
Mayor, I apologize.
Okay, can you respond to any of those?
Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor, members of the council, I appreciate the mayor's comments, and I appreciate the mayor's enthusiasm for visiting the site. I think that's a very positive thing. And I'm assuming that in your measuring, you were using the inches side instead of the centimeters side of the tape. That was a joke. So, I think we need to step back a little bit and ask the question, why the 20 feet? Why is there 20 feet here? What's the history on that? And I think it would be helpful to recognize that 2014 case, if we go to Elmo, thank you, that 2014 case approved 20 feet, but they just didn't approve it out of thin air. There was a reason they approved 20 feet, and that's because in the Type 2 area in downtown, for 37 years, since 1985, for 37 years, the requirement in the Type 2 area, the ordinance requirement in the Type 2 area is for that setback to be 20 feet. Where is the Type 2 area? It's the area in blue. Our site is here. This is Scottsdale Road. Scottsdale Road, you can see the areas in blue where that standard also applies. Now one of the concerns was about view corridors. Recall this slide. So I want to, with the 20 feet, we're playing by the rules. This wasn't an attempt to do something different or unusual or to ask for an amended development standard to do something. This is playing by the rules. So when we talk about view corridors, keep in mind the other three corners. Again, here is our site. And the right-of-way itself, the street, is 85 feet wide. It's 85 feet wide. So, as I said, we're playing by the rules, but the rules, even back in 1985, anticipated the very issue that's been raised. The staff anticipated this issue. So with a 20-foot setback, what did they require the builder to do? They implemented stringent step-back requirements, which say, and this is the ordinance, which say, in this Type 2 area, if you have a 20-foot setback, you must go up and then step the building back to ensure that the building does not crowd that area, and to require that there are those view corridors at that lower height to address this very issue. So in this instance, you can see where our building is right here. This is the mechanical on top. You would see the solar array over here. But this green area is the area where we are permitted to put a building. We're permitted to put the building there. We did not put the building in that green area. We could have used and drawn on that bank of square footage that we're entitled to and expanded the building that way, but we did not. So we created these view corridors after you get to, I believe it's 36 feet, Michelle, 3 stories. We create this view corridor and step backs. And again, we are not asking to modify those at all. Now, the point was made that those buildings to the south of us have a greater setback than we do on Scottsdale Road. And Mayor, I actually was the zoning attorney for both of those projects. So it's good to know you liked a couple of them, so thank you. And there was a very sound reason why we wanted a 32 and a 38-foot, not me, but the client wanted a 32-foot and a 38-foot setback there. And the reason was because those buildings are 100% residential. So on the ground floor, those pictures showed patios, and they showed doors going in and out of those residences that front on Scottsdale Road. So those builders said, if we're going to have residences on the ground floor with patios, we want to move them back from the noise of Scottsdale Road. They could have put them at 20 feet, but they chose to move them back so that those residents would not be impacted as much by the noise and the activity of Scottsdale Road itself. Now contrast that to our request. So we honor the city's belief that these projects now, unlike before, that these projects now should have a mix of uses, particularly at the street level. So what are we doing? In that area, 100% along Scottsdale Road, 100% along Scottsdale Road, turning into the Paseo and then going down Osborne will be a restaurant. Not residential, a restaurant. And the interesting thing is the two restaurant operators that we're seriously negotiating with, unlike residences who live there, these restaurant operators want the restaurant closer to the street. It makes better business sense for them because their customers want that and enjoy that. So we're actually taking that ground floor area and putting in non-residential restaurant uses. Finally, and this is not an issue that's been raised by the community. As noted, there's no opposition here. This has been vetted very carefully by the community. There's no opposition. The DRB, who focuses on this, whose folks can read plans very carefully, was unanimous in their support and recommendation for this project, and Planning Commission, unanimous recommendation of support for this project. Now, how does the professional planning staff, who's required to implement and understand the general plan, the downtown character area plan, the zoning ordinance, and the existing approved zoning case on this property, what have they said in your staff report? Let me give you a couple of some of their analysis. The proposed design of the building incorporates a variety of building forms and architectural features. The variety of building heights, overhangs, windows, patios, balconies, materials, and the building massing assist in providing definition to the building that contributes to providing human scale and a pedestrian-oriented active street frontage, which is exactly what the downtown Old Town Character Area Plan, the Downtown Urban Design Guidelines, and the General Plan call for to activate the street frontage, which is what those restaurants do. Speaking of activation, the staff report goes on to say, the building offers a transparent interface along Scottsdale Road and Osborne Road with direct access to the restaurant retail space on the ground level. The ground level of the proposed development is activated with tree-shaded sidewalks, abundant outdoor seating, increased open space, improved hardscape, and low-level lighting for safety. Mayor, members of the council, vice mayor, certainly understand the mayor's perspective, but we would respectfully request that you move forward with the case as recommended by the community, your development review board, and the planning commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Berry, and again, I appreciate that obviously, I'll reiterate that it is a corner It is a gateway, and it is a major obstacle that can be softened at that corner. And as you pointed out, other solutions conducted by yourself or others do have a softening of that corner. Now, at this point, I will turn over to Councilmember Millhaven, Vice Mayor Durham, and Councilwoman Caputi.
Thank you, Mayor. Gosh, you know, these projects go through an awful long process. We get P&Z email that's open to the public that tells us when a case is filed. Applicants call us and show us their project, sometimes even before they file the application. In fact, the mayor said that he met with this team 6 months ago. We had DRB, which I happened to chair in June, that approved the project. Planning was in August. This goes through a really, really long process. So it's kind of disappointing that after we've had every opportunity to give feedback to a project, that at the 11th hour from the dais, we try to redesign projects. So wish you had brought this up sooner, Mayor. In terms of this project, the Carter is a 20-foot sidewalk. What I'm seeing here is a 20-foot sidewalk. Certainly, folks might like to have a patio between the building and Scottsdale Road, but frankly, I'd rather have a patio on the Paseo and not be eating my meal inhaling exhaust fumes. So appreciate the open space in the Paseo. This council prides itself on holding developers to really, really high standards. And I've heard my colleagues talk about we shouldn't be making exceptions to development standards. And this project is in compliance with all development standards. I think that we have a responsibility to deal in good faith with folks that when they bring a project forward, when we say we don't want any exceptions and they bring something forward that meets every criteria within all of our zoning and design guidelines, we have a responsibility to respect that and to ask for exceptions or something more than is required, especially at the 11th hour, I think is an act of poor faith. I also don't think because a neighbor decided to put their building further back from the road than was required, that we should then require all of their neighbors to do the same. So this project is a great project. It meets all of the development standards and guidelines, has unanimous approval of DRB and zoning. As Mr. Berry said, shows that it's consistent with what the downtown plan has been for years and years. And so I would like to make a motion to, here we go, adopt ordinance number 4560, approving zoning district map amendment to amend an existing development plan and zoning stipulations. Adopt resolution number 12589, declaring the Osborne Residential Healthcare Facility Development Plan a public record. Adopt resolution 12570, approving a conditional use permit for residential healthcare facility. And adopt resolution 12580, authorizing the Osborne Residential Healthcare Facility Conditional Zoning Reversion Agreement Contract 2022-137 COS. Thank you.
Excuse me, I just want to clarify that our council just adopted new rules. It was item number 15, and it would allow our process to allow any questions of staff or other people to speak prior to a main motion. I just mentioned that because it's useful. I see other people that want to speak, and I believe that that's your motion can stand, but I believe we have some other colleagues that by our rules.
My motion doesn't preclude any.
Excuse me?
I said my motion doesn't preclude
Okay.
any
Well, generally we don't have questions after the motion. We have them before a main motion, but that's all right. Yes. Okay.
So my understanding.
Now I hear your motion, and
at
at this point I'm just pointing it out that those rules went into effect because we discussed how we want to allow other people to weigh in or otherwise. So I want to just mention that as because you're entering a main motion when I had Vice Mayor Durham willing to speak and Councilwoman Caputi willing to speak.
I believe our rules allow me to make a motion and it doesn't preclude anybody from additional discussion.
I understand, and we don't have a second yet, so I'm just trying to defer that just for a minute so that we could let other colleagues.
I'm happy to second that motion. I want to make a comment as well, but
Oh, excuse me. So you do want to second it later? Okay, good. So you're second on the list right here of people that wanted to queue in to discuss. So I just want to point that out as just trying to help let everyone weigh in on what or add to the discussion.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next, we'll go to Vice Mayor Durham and then Councilwoman Caputi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask you a question, actually, about your slide number 3.
Sure.
You said the actual setback on the corridor there was 36 feet, and I think your yellow arrow points to the higher tower, but it appears that there's some kind of a building extension that juts out to the right a little bit closer to the curb. Certainly.
There is a pop-out that helps diminish the verticality of it.
Okay.
But the main building is at that 32 feet, et cetera. So it is possible to pop something out in a building configuration, but the main massing was still held before they went as vertical. So, and this is just the construction drawing that indicates that.
Right. I think the Osborne in some ways is a little bit similar because they're 2 or 3 stories that sort of pop out, and then it drops back at, I forget exactly which story, the 3rd or 4th or 5th there.
Thank you. And the main, but the main wing pops, all pops out at that distance, at 20 feet below, behind curb. It didn't have a larger setback and then a partial pop out.
Right.
Just thank you for that question. Again, I'm looking at the criteria. Anything else? Just general comments? Okay.
No, thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilwoman Caputi with some comments, and then Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would like to second that. And then just make a couple of comments. I'm not sure I can say anything better than Councilwoman Milhaven. I completely agree with most of what she just said, and I just want to add that I appreciate that our mayor has a personal preference that would put the buildings farther off of the street, but I think that's a personal preference. I know for me, when I walk into a downtown area, I actually would like to see things closer to the street, more engaged, more exciting. We were just in the League of Towns and Cities last week, and they did a whole bunch of presentations on would you rather be here or would you rather be there? And a lot of the would you rather be here were all pictures of cities that were exciting, that were vibrant, that they had action. You were walking down and you were seeing things and engaging and sitting on the patios. To me, in a downtown area, that's precisely what we would be looking for, something that is engaging and closer to the street, not walking down the street and seeing a huge open area. Also, if we're trying to make more shade downtown, it would make more sense, of course, to have the place where people are walking to be shaded. I think that, as Councilwoman Milhaven said, when we say the things that we expect out of a project and the applicant gives us every single thing we're looking for, it's just really hard to tell them to go back and do it again because someone had a different preference. I mean, not only the zoning and the setbacks and the stepbacks are being met, but even things like, as was mentioned, paying attention to the heat island mitigation issue, which we're just about to have a work study on. We are literally going to have this conversation right after this case, and we're going to say how we want projects to underground their asphalt and get rid of open asphalt that causes increased heat in our downtown area. This project is actually doing that. They are voluntarily putting solar on their roof, which we don't even mandate, but is a wonderful thing. And so, again, when an applicant comes to us after years of putting a project together and checks all the boxes, I can see us making little last-minute tweaks, but making a giant change to a project, it's not the right way to do business. So I definitely want to second the motion to approve this project as presented. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councilwoman Janik and Councilwoman Whitehead.
I just have a quick question. Could you show the footprint again from above of the 20-foot border, the landscaping, the building? You had a slide that was looking from above down on the project.
Was it this one or no?
No, it showed the trees.
I think it was a site.
Mayor,
I think it was a
Councilwoman
site
Janik,
plan.
was it my original presentation or the presentation after the mayor had?
I
Original.
believe I saw it in the presentation, site plan 01, and it had Osborne shown as well as the contrasting to Scottsdale Road. Osborne had a much wider, setback. No, it's the floor plan. It's the floor plan 001. Now, that's a view on Osborne, by the way, with that number. So it's a flat site plan.
Give me a moment, I apologize.
Mayor and council, if I may, I think we have the slide you're looking for in the staff presentation as well, if we want to switch
Yeah.
back to the staff presentation.
Thank you.
And go
Thank
to the
you.
site plan.
I think this may be it right here. Is that it?
No.
No?
Wow, strike three.
Let's see if it's more clear and let's see if it's more clear. Is that the staff presentation? No, we'll go to digital. Thank you, John.
Yeah, why don't you give it to him? We have the slide, I'm sorry. Is that it? Not, Tom has it on his iPad.
Well, that's a good example
That's it.
there.
Yeah.
And that's the landscape plan that Vice Mayor referred to. You'll see the more substantial, larger tree look, rendering there on Osborne versus the narrow passage with, I don't know, maybe a 4-foot planter area or
Could
something.
we, I'm sorry to interrupt, Mayor, could we try the Elmo for a second? See if I can zoom in. So that is the one that Vice Mayor Durham showed, which shows Scottsdale Road over here, Osborne here, and this is the corner right here.
Thank you. And to clarify, it appears as though you have some tables shown outdoors along Osborne. Is that correct? Or that's just
Mayor, yes.
And the other side probably has a 8-foot sidewalk and then a
So,
planter.
Mayor, members, Vice Mayor, and Councilwoman Janik, what you can see along Osborne, for example, is the landscape setback, detached 8-foot sidewalk, and then the patio for the building, and you can see where the building's located. You can also see the large overhang, continuous overhang for shade around the building as well. You also see the step back of the building. It goes up, steps back, comes up, steps back. And again, under the rules, we could move these closer to Scottsdale Road, but we're not.
So it also shows where the Carter steps back substantially from where this building is. Thank you, Betty. You still, sorry.
One more question. What is the height of the canopy along Scottsdale?
The height of the canopy there, pardon me? 16 feet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Could I get a clarification too for that question by Vice Mayor? What is the back of curb on Osborne to the building main mass? What is that?
Approximately 20 feet.
Why does it look on Osborne?
Yes.
Well, it's been rendered so differently on the site plan. It appears to be larger than 20 feet. Is it?
Mayor, council members, the architects are telling me that it is in conformance with the plan. Is that correct? Yeah, yes.
Okay. So you're saying the setback is 20 feet back of curb on Osborne as well?
Mayor, yes.
Well, one's rendered visually to me looks much wider. Thank you. Were you done, Councilwoman Janik? Okay, Councilwoman Whitehead, Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, Mayor. And actually, I think a lot of the clarifications have been made for me. But I do think, I appreciate this discussion, Mayor, and I appreciate these photos and understanding the decision behind setting the 2 apartment complexes further back. And I would say that I agree with Councilwoman Milhaven in that adding the Paseo, pulling pedestrians off Scottsdale Road and adding pedestrian access for the 2 apartment complexes, I like that probably much better than widening the sidewalk on Scottsdale Road. So actually, and PBD, it's required to do the International Green Construction Building Codes that are on our books anyway, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so, but I do appreciate the, that you followed that. Is there anything you wanted to add on the water, some of the steps you're taking on water, since that is a big issue?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council Member, I do have several slides on what we're doing from a water perspective, if I could grab them. The good news is not all of this. I do have 3 slides that give a partial list of what we're doing to conserve water and achieve those 35% and 45% reductions. Let me back this up. There will be no turf. Permeable paving is provided to increase soil percolation, drip irrigation, and smart controllers for the drip irrigation. We're going to collect rainwater and then have a gray water filtration system for that rainwater. So we'll actually filter it and purify it, and we'll be able to use that rainwater, excuse me, for outdoor irrigation. We'll have a saltwater pool. We're going to reuse the backwash for hardy desert plants. Low-flow toilets, faucets, shower heads, and kitchen fixtures. Smart faucets with tap-to-turn-off technology. We think that'll be an amenity for our residents as well. Smart leak sensors, so we'll know when and where a leak occurs. By the way, these are all available on apps now for your house. It's amazing the technology that's out there, but obviously this gets scaled in a very different quality and type of technology for a building like this. We're going to capture and reuse condensation from the mechanical units. We're going to provide pool cover to reduce evaporation, and we are going to limit the hours that the pool is open, and when it's closed, there will be a pool cover on top of it. There will be showers in lieu of bathtubs. The memory care facility has a common kitchen and dining areas, and those units have no individual kitchens. And the independent living and assisted living will have community kitchens. So again, those individual units are not going to be generating the water consumption that you would see in a traditional residential context. Again, overall reduction in water consumption, 35%. The outdoors, which again is 70 to 80%, depending on whose numbers you're paying attention to, of our water consumption is outdoors. And I would also note that this area of downtown, like most of downtown, is in the Salt River Project area, not served by CAP water. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for reminding me of those. I like the combination of high tech with really, really low tech, like get the condensation off the AC units and water some plants. Very nice. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Next, Councilwoman Littlefield, and then myself.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would prefer a larger setback to match the rest of the streetscape, as the mayor suggested. However, I think the need for this kind of a healthcare facility in South Scottsdale is very real, and it's becoming more and more necessary as the years go by and our population ages. I want to allow our citizens to stay as independent as possible and to live near their family and their friends and maintain their quality of life. That to me is more important than the setback. I'm sorry. I do ask that you soften that setback difference as much as you possibly can, and possibly with landscaping or other architectural things that could make it blend better. But I think that the need for this building and its services to our citizens is high enough to override that difference. And you have fulfilled all of our codes, all of our obligations that we require, and so I will be supporting this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Berry. I would move to amend the motion that the setback on Scottsdale Road match the Carter setback, which is 32 feet for the main building mass, not 40 feet as we had discussed before, so that it would at least have a contiguous feel as you walk rather than the constricted side. So that's my amended motion, my motion to amend. I don't feel or see a second, but I think that would be, this is really a phase 2 of the Carter project in my view. And so having a continuous line there of building makes sense. No other comment? We have a main motion. I don't see any further discussion. Please record your vote. I'm sorry. I meant to say, didn't you mean to say no, Ms. Caputi? I didn't get a second.
Oh.
Okay, so let's do over, okay?
Do over, please. Thank you.
So we're voting for the main motion
Okay.
and the second as submitted, okay? So please record your vote. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. We will take to heart your comments about the corner. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we will go to public comment. Public comment is a second opportunity for the public to step forward and discuss a non-agendized item. Therefore, I open public comment, and seeing none, we will then close public comment. The next agendized item is the citizen petition, which is the receipt of a citizen petition. That's an opportunity for any person to step forward and present at the clerk's office, and then we could hear a petition by right. The clerk informs me there is no request for a citizen petition. Next, we would go to the mayor and council items. I believe we had a request do we have any requests from any council member? I will point out that some of the rules have changed slightly in our item 15 as far as thorough notification and so forth. So item 15, which which was approved, allows for items to be brought forward by the mayor and council and a certain process for that. So we'll take note of that, and seeing none, therefore the mayor and council items is closed. At this point, I will adjourn the regular portion of the city council meeting. We will be convening shortly for a work study session to review 2 items. Are you amenable to adjourning for a 10-minute break? So we would be returning at 7 o'clock. At that point, we will have the items in our work study. So we will be shortly recessed and reconvene with our work study session. Thank you. September 13th, 2022 City Council Work Study Session to order. For the record, all members of council are here as well as our charter officer. So everyone is present in person, live. We will, our work study session is a different format. It's a less formal format. It's allowing us to receive information and discuss it, where the mayor and council post the topics that we will be looking at. It also gives us a opportunity to respond and give staff some direction from the council. We do call upon public comment, and to maximize time, we allow for up to 5 speakers at the beginning of the work study. The subject would be the topics that are listed on our work study agenda. At this point, we've received one request, Mr. Daniel Ishak, and please come forward. You have state your name, address, and you have 3 minutes.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council, thank you. Daniel Isaac, 13530 East Onyx Court. I'm proud to support the sustainability efforts that the city is undertaking, and I'm glad that the city has increased its focus on this matter. I trust that the council will balance the effect of various proposed measures with the impact on the economic vitality of our city. The paper as submitted has lots of great stuff. I'm especially supportive of the items that directly impact our heat island effect and those that will address upcoming water issues. I'm not going to focus on all of the great things that are in there, but I do want to focus on 3 areas. One is scope creep. While community service, art education, food security, et cetera, are all important to our city, I do think we have other agencies and staff within our city to focus on that, and I think that would be a distraction from the greater issues of the sustainability effort. Let's not bog down this initiative with too great of aspirations. 2 things that I think are overemphasized in the document are, first, electric vehicles, and I really strongly believe we need to stop pushing that. Their manufacturing carbon footprint is 50% larger than a traditional vehicle. And more importantly, there are numerous academic studies that show while EVs are great in some communities, they are less effective and at times worse than traditional cars, primarily due to climate. Specifically, in the heat of Maricopa County, the heat results in inefficient discharge and inefficient recharge of the batteries. Plus, our power grid is still largely carbon-based. We should not encourage EVs, and we should certainly not transition the city fleet to them. If we must do something with the city fleet, we should examine natural gas rather than electric vehicles. Also, recycling. The 3 R's of sustainability are reduce, reuse, and recycle. There have been academic studies that show that too much of a focus on recycling actually increases waste because people stop focusing on reduction and reuse of materials. And until the market for recyclable materials improves significantly, much of what is separated still ends up in landfills. Lastly, I think we should be careful about building mandates. We should not increase the cost of construction, especially in light of the housing shortage within the valley, based on aspirations. Let the market and individual consumers make decisions on EV ports, recycling bins, solar readiness, etc. So in short, I think that it is great that the city is focusing on this matter. We must address the heat island effect. We must address our impending water issues, but let's do things focused and intelligently and based on facts. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we will close public comment and move on to item number 1, which is the community engagement findings and recommendation. Presenter is Casey Short with the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Initiative Fellow. She's a fellow with that group. Great to see you. Thank you for being here, Casey.
Hi, thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, and everyone who's still here. I appreciate it. As the mayor said, I am a fellow on behalf of the Harvard Bloomberg City Leadership Initiative. Okay, so I will briefly discuss the National Community Survey. The last one was released in 2020. Then I will discuss the community engagement project that I worked on, including findings and recommendations for the city. So Scottsdale, as I said, participates in the National Community Survey, which gives residents a chance to rate their quality of life and satisfaction with various city services and programs. And from this survey, we know that overall quality of life in Scottsdale is excellent. Residents who live here recommend living here to others, and they want to continue to live here for at least the next 5 years. However, we've also found that 18 to 34-year-olds, women, and people of color scored lower on certain segments in terms of their satisfaction of certain segments of that survey, which is where this community engagement project comes in. And I do want to, let me go back. I do want to say, moving forward, any statistics that I share will be referencing this specific project, not the Greater National Community Survey. So I conducted 10 interviews, individual interviews, and 10 focus groups with 49 residents who have lived in the city on average for 14 years. 2/3 of the participants were women. And our most represented age range was 35 to 54-year-olds, but our second highest representation were young adults between the ages of 18 to 24. Between the ethnicity and race options, we had 67% of the participants identify as people of color. Now, the segments of the survey that I mentioned earlier, where participants of this project, or I should say young adults, people of color, and women shared lower satisfaction with, had to do with sense of community, community involvement, respect and acceptance, and perception of Scottsdale. So that's what I will be focusing on. In each of the interview and focus groups, I asked upwards of 18 to 20 questions, but for the purpose of this, I'm going to briefly summarize just a handful of them. So I asked participants to describe their ideal community in 1 or 2 words, and the most common responses were friendly, safe, and diverse or inclusive. Next, I asked them to describe the community that they experience in Scottsdale, and the most common responses were segregated and homogeneous. And on top of this, 1/5 of the participants pressed that the distinction between the north and the south parts of the city directly contributed to their feelings of not feeling welcome overall or generally. Next, we asked if participants felt that they were able to provide input on decisions that mattered to them in the city, and 42% explicitly said no, they didn't feel they had access to provide input or share their voice. And there was a general consensus that, and this is for participants regardless of background, that they would like to see more effort on behalf of the city to engage the community outside of the office, or engage the community outside of traditional channels like city council meetings, because these can be intimidating. Next, we asked how open and accepting Scottsdale is of people with diverse backgrounds. 15% of the participants said yes, Scottsdale is open and accepting, but 30% said no, they did not feel this way. And on top of this, 1/3 of the participants of color shared experiences that they've had in the city where they feel accepted if they look and act the part of the majority. So in other words, if they put on an act rather simply exist in their own skin, then they feel that yes, they can navigate the city and feel welcome in all spaces. For perception, we wanted to know how residents describe the city when speaking to people who don't currently live here. And the most common responses were affluent, beautiful, and having wonderful parks and recreation. Now, I want to make it clear that this statement and this sentiment was not the majority of responses, but a handful of young adults and people of color did share that they did not want to be associated with the reputation of North Scottsdale, and therefore are incredibly intentional with how and who they share this information with. And during my short summer here, I've found it commonplace for people to be like, yes, I live in Scottsdale, I live in this part of the city. So there's a lot of pride in the various neighborhoods, and I think we can build on that pride to unify Scottsdale. And specifically, reducing that divergence between the north and the south parts will reduce the number of negative or unfortunate experiences that some of the participants shared that they've had in the city. So, recommendations. My first recommendation is to co-design community engagement approaches. And co-design refers to a participatory approach to designing solutions where community members are treated as equal collaborators in the process. So for local government, this would mean commissioners, councilpersons, and employees would work alongside the residents to design with them rather than for them. And so a hypothetical situation. Say we want to better understand what it would take to get 18 to 24-year-olds interested in working for the city of Scottsdale. We would hire one or a handful of 18 to 24-year-old residents to be our co-designers. They would liaise between our internal project team and their external networks to uncover their specific pain points or ideal incentives that would get them in the door or through the application process. Okay. And this is a very iterative process. It's comprised of 2-week sprints, and projects take anywhere from 3 to 5 months, depending on the complexity of the issue. And I do want to share one case study coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. In 2020, they found that the city was experiencing rapid growth in the construction industry due to a multi-billion-dollar medical center development project, but they were struggling to find workforce. So they took a look at the city's demographics and realized that their most vulnerable population were women of color, and they accounted for 13% of the entire city, but only 1% of the construction industry. So they wanted to understand what would it take to get women of color into the construction industry for long-term employment. And they submitted this prototype to the Global Bloomberg Mayor's Challenge, and they won $1 million, as well as 3 years worth of technical assistance to carry it out. They also won another $750,000 from the federal government to carry out the project. So it is an approach that some local governments are taking and they're finding success with. So next, my next recommendation has to do with addressing the changing landscape of the city. COVID-19 and the relative affordability of Arizona has prompted many people from the West Coast to relocate here. So the city's demographics are naturally changing, and this warrants thought because with those changes comes a diversification of needs and expectations of the city. So what would be really important here is not only continuing to nurture and take care of current residents and local business owners, but adapt for the new generation of residents and business owners that are coming into the city. And so in terms of fostering that, we can partner with local chambers to host networking events and educational panels so local business owners can learn from each other. But at the same time, we can partner with the chambers to carry out co-design projects. So if we want to better understand what a minority-owned business needs from us to not only get into Scottsdale, but to stay long-term, we can go through this co-design process and the solutions can come from that community. Second, I would recommend that we establish business diversity imperatives to give minority-owned businesses a better shot at participating in city contracts. And actually, I believe it was on the 12th of this month, that was yesterday, on the 8th of this month, Tempe the Tempe City Council shared that they are moving forward with launching a micro-manufacturing program for minority-owned businesses that consist of federal and local grants for this very purpose. My third recommendation is to bring City Hall out into the community. I spoke with the public information officer of Los Alamos, New Mexico, and asked about their community engagement initiatives and approaches. And she said their number one rule is that they staff booths at all existing citywide events with an elected official, a city employee, and a handful of interns. They give the interns tablets or iPads, and they walk through the crowd, say at a farmer's market or an art walk, and they collect feedback from residents in real time through short form surveys. So this actually helped with the development of a new park that they wanted to do a couple years ago. Also, another piece of common feedback was to have more interaction and events in the south part of the city. Participants mentioned that attending multicultural events in the north part of the city is not always possible due to issues with transportation. So traveling down to Tempe or Mesa can at times be easier for them. And meet and greets in parks are a very cost-effective and family-friendly way to get to know the community. The Paiute Neighborhood Center hosts coffee meetings every other Wednesday, and I hosted 2 focus groups there, specifically with their Spanish-speaking clients. And they said they would welcome any city employee, elected official who wanted to come and meet with them and speak on behalf of the city. They would love that kind of interaction. Councilpersons and commissioners can also get to know families through reading at public libraries. This is a common initiative in other cities in the Valley as well. And I know there are already like story time series that are hosted by the public libraries here. So getting elected officials to read to children, I think, would be very welcome from families. And lastly, the Gilbert Police Department has found success with their Coffee with a Cop series. It's given the community a really great opportunity to interact with the department in an informal way that has resulted in stronger relationships and building trust. So just to recap, I think that working alongside the community to build solutions that address their needs will enhance their buy-in and support, and it will also build more trust, not only in each other, but in local government. And adopting support to, think about future residents or future local business owners will ensure that the city continues to not only be a destination for tourism, but it stays competitive with other cities in the Valley. And lastly, spending time with residents in their spaces and neighborhoods gives both parties a chance to interact in a way where the focus is on getting to know each other rather than needing things from each other. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ms. Short. Did we have any questions or comments? I can lead off with just a few things because I am, a member of the Bloomberg Harvard Leadership Initiative, and many cities wish they had Scottsdale's problems. I say that because there's many obstacles in crime and infrastructure and other issues that provide big challenges. But I think also that if we want to improve things, we have to improve communication. And that's really the root for solution of any in any case in good government. Let's listen to Vice Mayor Durham.
Thank you, Mayor. How were the 49 participants that you work with in the focus groups, how were they chosen?
We went through some extensive recruitment approaches. So we posted about this in city newsletters, we sent out emails, I reached out to, I believe, almost 30 not members of the community, but organizations within Scottsdale, so Vista del Camino, Paiute Neighborhood Center, faith communities, all of them. So I connected on the phone and had meetings with community leaders in this way and told them about the project and asked them to share the flyer and all of the information with their communities or their listservs. Social media was the #1 way that participants heard about this project. Word of mouth was the second highest way, and then Arizona State University also posted in their newsletter, so just tried to get the word out organically, and residents would reach out to me with interest in participating.
Councilwoman Whitehead.
Well, thank you. That's a very interesting presentation, and I jotted down some of the ideas. I do think we have, I've seen periodically we have coffee with the cops, so we do have that, but it is a good idea. So thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Janik.
Thank you. I wanted to say the same thing. A lot of your ideas are very, very good, especially coffee at the Paiute Center, et cetera. And I know whenever we have projects that we want to introduce, we have meetings, but all the meetings are around here. And I feel that we need to get a more diverse voice in what people think about the different projects we're thinking about pursuing. And I really like your ideas about the way to go about it. Let's use our libraries to meet with the people that are dispersed all over the city. So thanks for pointing that out. I think those are great ideas.
Thank you very much.
Councilwoman Caputi.
That's a great point, Councilwoman Giannick. I was thinking that as well. It's true that I feel like we're always hearing the same voices. I don't necessarily have the solution, but I do think we need to do a better job of including other voices. When we go to meetings and outreach meetings and hearings of all sorts, we tend to get the same people speaking, even in council meetings, which I agree are very intimidating for all of us. We're always hearing from the same people. So I do think it's really important that we try to increase our reach. And I think these are some great first steps. And let's just keep pushing the needle, because we would definitely benefit from hearing from more young people, from a more diverse crowd of folks, not even just by the usual diversity measures, because, I mean, Scottsdale is a fairly homogeneous city, but even just in terms of all sorts of diversity by every measure, be great to hear some other voices. So thank you.
Yeah. Councilwoman Littlefield.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I liked that very much. As a lifelong resident of Scottsdale, it was quite interesting to me. I liked some of your ideas. I thought they were good. I was a little concerned about the sampling of 49 people in a town of about 250,000. I think we need a bigger sampling and be able to reach more people to get a broader base and to lower any kind of error margins for that kind of a testing. But I do like that idea, and I think that we should go forward with this and see where we can come up with. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that comment. A lot of the participants mentioned that they loved the focus group format, so if this were to be able to continue, I think there would be a lot of response and more people interested. Yeah.
Well, I would, I see no other hands. I would just say, ask two things. What was the biggest surprise for you in this discovery? What would you say?
I think this is a pleasant surprise, but I mentioned the pride that the participants have. I feel like every person that I've met in Scottsdale this summer that I've been here is incredibly proud to be here. So as somebody who's coming from Los Angeles, which is an extremely large city, I have not experienced that level of pride from other residents before, so it's been nice to be around.
The other thing is the next step, because as you know, we're highly committee driven, and we certainly will make sure that various human services, human relations, general employment base and retention of employees, attraction and recruitment is very important. Generally, when I'm asked, I go by the general plan, and I know when we came over and we interviewed. The general plan has 24 elements, and really they all revolve, whether it's arts and culture or transportation, really in how human beings interact with one another. I want to stress to one point that in some cases, one section on growth and development ends up being like 99% of some in some people's mind, when trails, environment, sustainability, well-being, infrastructure are 24 parts of my day. And I think that if someone feels underrepresented, underemployed, or maybe unengaged, we have a way of reaching individuals, whatever their interests may be, in arts and culture with the outreach that we have there, as well as sports and family, neighborhood commitments like that. It's not always about development per se, but somehow that rises like it's more important than the other 24. In my point of view, it is not. They all have an equal share in a successful, economic, vibrant community. So that's, I guess, the next step in terms of your involvement. We appreciate your recommendations. And will you have some follow-up with us, or is there any reporting later, or what do we do from here with your recommendations?
In terms of me
Yeah,
specifically?
Your appointment here and how that works out.
Oh, this is my last week. This is the end of my fellowship here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we definitely want to stay in contact. And, again, I'm trying to, as a council, we're all working together to, elevate ourselves and keep people engaged in any of the pathways here in the city. So thank you very much for providing this. Councilwoman Whitehead?
Well, I just didn't know, so I just also want to, special thanks since this is your last week. Great job.
Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you. Then that will conclude that work study item, and we greatly appreciate your presentation.
Thank you, everyone.
The next item, number 2, deals with sustainability and heat mitigation plan updates. Our presenter is Lisa McNeely. She's our sustainability director. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Mayor Ortega, Vice Mayor Durham, council members. As you said, I'm Lisa McNeely. I'm the Sustainability Director for the city. I'm joined by Tim Connor, who is the manager of the Office of Environmental Initiatives. And I want to thank you for your time to be able to come and talk to you about the work that's been happening over the last, actually 2 years, if you look at the full time that's been spent on the heat mitigation plan, and for your direction as we move forward. Am I going to know how to move this slide? Oh, I do know how to move the slide, sorry. So I wanted to start not with the problem, but with our successes. Scottsdale is, this may be the city's first sustainability plan, but it's certainly not I'm not the first sustainability officer here. There's been a lot of work. It's a special place that has consistently championed environmental stewardship while maintaining a high quality of life for our residents, our visitors, our businesses. We've heard about the preserve. We know that the water campus is a technologically advanced model for water supply that is, that attracts people from around the world to come and look and to follow that example. The Greenbelt is at 11 miles of an oasis in the middle of the city. And our green building program, which I know you've also heard a lot about recently, is really, had just a tremendous impact. So how did we go from where we are to the development of the sustainability plan? So we have a rough working draft that we've shared in your packet. I think we heard the public comment about that earlier. It was identified in the Scottsdale plan. It's been a priority of this council, I know, for at least a couple of years. So last August, we partnered with I'm going to have to read this to get it right, the Robin Milani Walton Sustainability Solution Service to help us get started on this work. They provided assistance and guidance. They've assessed our progress to date and looked at what other cities have been doing and helped deliver for us a scan of where we got started. And that was done last fall. And what I want to go forward from now is to walk you through how we got to that rough first draft from that starting point. So the big picture question is, what should the sustainability plan be? What should its scope be? What should its ambition be? In the review that ASU did when they looked at the other cities, they found a range of approaches. Many covered all 3 dimensions of sustainability, which is environmental, social, and economic. Most were community-wide plans, and they really, but what all of them did was reflect the vision for their cities. And so what we want to do with this plan is make sure that it reflects the values of the city and charts its course towards continuing that management and protection of the environment so that we can benefit both people living here today, but also future generations. This is a more expansive view of sustainability. It encompasses factors like health, like walkability, access to nature, and inclusive and shared community resources. ASU recommended that we keep our plan clear, comprehensive, inclusive, and really actionable. And so I hope that's what you'll start to see here, and I hope to get your direction as we move forward on that. Oh, went the wrong way. So after we documented that practice and understood the scope of work, we wanted to reach out to our residents, and we started with the Scottsdale Environmental Advisory Committee. We've been on their agenda multiple times to get both early feedback on what the scope of work would be for ASU, but also on the planned content. And we've gotten general input from them that they want detailed actions. They want to focus on implementation. They don't want this to just sit on the table. They want us to be ambitious, to be flexible, to make sure that as there are future sort of opportunities or new technologies that become more feasible, that we can take advantage of them, and to fully calculate sort of cost savings and benefits. We've also gotten input on specific actions around trees, stronger building codes, as you've heard, green events, and also on EVs. We've also had an initial round of community meetings. We had and have gotten some early input, again, broadly on what kinds of actions and what the scope of the plan could be. So we had two 90-minute workshops in May, one in just across the street and one in northern Scottsdale. We asked them to, as you can sort of see, write on sticky notes. What should we be doing? What should the city do? What should the community be doing? We got 450 responses in a fairly short time period. A lot of the focus was on issues around emissions and air quality, energy and climate change, also around nature-based solutions. But we got input across the board on the topics we asked about. And then we asked participants to vote on their actions. It's one of my favorite things to do in a meeting, hand people little dots and have them go put them around. And we'd kind of clustered some of those actions so that, because some were repetitive or very similar. And we then used these top getting votes as kind of the starting point for the strategies in the draft that you saw. What got the most votes? Open space and trees, renewable energy and energy efficiency. They wanted us to continue to address water shortage, reduce waste, economic development, heat mitigation, but also creating heat resilient centers, attracting green businesses, and helping increase affordable housing, which you can do if you look at the whole lifespan of that and looking at what does it cost to cool that house? What does it cost for the water for that house? And we want to continue to hear from people. We want to get as much engagement as possible. I don't know if somebody really planned the agenda today, but we've really had connections between them, and I'm looking forward to reading the report from Ms. Short and working with Jackie Johnson as well for more of these ideas as we continue to solicit input. We got comments on the website. And to skip ahead to somewhat the next steps, we've got additional community workshops planned in October and reaching out to other boards and commissions. But I can't forget to talk about city staff. We also talked to them. They've been involved from the beginning in helping develop the scan. They've contributed their ideas for actions and reviewed the text. And so, what did they tell us? they really often came up with ways to expand and improve what they're currently doing, and made suggestions for leadership on new programs. We heard about comprehensive actions on mobility and connectivity, arts, communication, working with schools, were all things that we logged from staff. And so between the input and the advice from ASU, we developed we started kind of on a framework, centering around 5 pathways or groupings of what will be 15 different topics. Again, this is, if you look on page 3 of the attachment that we gave you, this is all listed there. This is based on an ICLEI framework, which is an international group that's been around for decades, working with local governments, and is their recommended approach, although we've tweaked it somewhat because you always do that. Scottsdale, you want to kind of worked a little bit better in connection with some of the direction from the general plan. And then we have the 15 topics. Some of these may be ones that you expect. Some may be ones that we've included to really match what is the best practice out there for how local governments are approaching this. It's driven by a desire to achieve transformative change. I know I'm new to Scottsdale. Those of you who may not know it, I lived in northern Arizona for a while, which I know is not the same, but when I moved here, I met with a lot of people and I asked a similar set of questions. And what my general impression is that, yeah, sometimes Scottsdale can be a little cautious, but that when you decide to do things, you want to do it all the way. And that's, I always had that voice in the back of my head as we were talking to people and as the whole team developed these lists of topics and the pathways. So we'll circle back to the topics in a second. I just want to give a few more.
Ms. McNeely, just
Yes,
a
sir.
suggestion, perhaps just to make this bite-size, going back to your 15 points, and just wondering if anyone has any comments so far, so we don't get too far ahead, if there's any portion.
Absolutely.
Okay, and we'll take it maybe thirdsies or whatever. Plan and 15 topics, did they evolve kind of as people mentioned them, and then you generalized and grouped them? There could have been 13 topics or 16. How did that work out?
So many of the topics came from the general plan. So character at one point was a separate topic, and opted to kind of combine it with art. Sometimes there's a lot of synergies and overlap between these. So, for example, in air quality, you could talk about trees because of the benefit that they give to the air. We've included strategies about trees under the heat section. And so we had those overlaps. But we started with the general plan elements and input from ASU from what are in kind of what our best practices are, and sort of whittled it down a little bit to this. At one point we had 18, but we've mostly just pulled them together.
Good. And then just as part of the outreach, because the mayor and council breakfast is coming up on September 22nd, which is one of the topics on water. So perhaps there's a way to get surveyed. We plan to have about 250 people there, maybe even 300. And certainly the awareness of where you'll run into many familiar people on that particular topic that we're all engaged with. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
So go on with the next group.
So I started by talking about Scottsdale's leadership, and so it shouldn't surprise you that there's a long list of related plans to the pathways that we have. I know this is small font, it's in the document, but these are, we started by consulting them. We wanted to make sure that that while the plan reflected the work that's in these companion documents, that we didn't ignore or have too much overlap in the objectives. And so we view many of these as partner plans to the document. Again, going back to the advice to be kind of simple and clear language, we don't need to reinvent the Transportation Action Plan that was just approved by Council. But what we want to do, and I'll talk a little bit more about, well, let me just go to that. So it'll be in a slide. So the outline that we have right now is, we're hoping that, for each topic, we've got these multiple elements that we're going to talk about. We're going to have a success statement. We're going to have the in Scottsdale that gives some of the context and tells us why we should care about this, that has the strategies and actions, sustainability indicators, and the relevant actions. And so we hope that this simplicity and clarity will help us, build a common vision and as we move forward. But what I wanted to kind of skip to here was, to your question about how we decided on topics and how we started building up those strategies and actions. In my mind, there were kind of 4 different types of these topics. There was the one that is building on these existing plans and leadership, where what we hope to do in those chapters is look beyond what the city's currently doing. We have another smaller grouping that are other traditional sustainability plan topics where the city hasn't done as much, and so we need to develop some of those baseline efforts and actually to gather more data. Another small group where we have more detailed plans being crafted, so extreme heat, which I'm going to be talking about a little bit later, also energy, where I think there's a work study session scheduled in October from Director Worth, where, again, we can do more details there and look for more policy direction from the council. And then a 4th one, which is where the city is doing existing work, but what we want to do is kind of make connections to sustainability and potentially find new elements to this. So an example there, might be I'm working on some of the data work in adjacent to the Smart City initiative and looking at ways where we can, whether it's related to traffics or lighting or whatever, to reduce the energy use for the city. That's kind of what I mean by the new connections. So I wanted to take a pause again before I move to next steps and see if there's other feedback. We're looking, does this framework with these pathways and those topics, does this feel right? Is there anything missing as we're about to go back out to the community?
Great. Councilmember Millhaven and Councilwoman Whitehead.
I think this all looks great. I just have one question, and I don't know if it belongs at this section or not, so I'll just ask you. So, right, folks are really worried about water, and I see water shows up in a couple of different lists. And we keep hearing people talk about, in fact, somebody made a public comment earlier about we need to do a better job looking at water in our development projects. And my understanding was we take a pretty rigorous view of sort of what are the demands of water and what do development need to do to help conserve water. Will that be will looking at that be part of the scope of work of this effort?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman, as we move forward, I think, I know that the Water Department just brought you their sustainable water management principles that talked about that. And yes, so I met, before we submitted this, I met with Director Biesmeyer and Gretchen Baumgartner, and that topic came up, and I think we will look to do that, and especially if that's the direction of council.
I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Whitehead.
Well, I'll just keep talking, I'll keep the subject the same, and I think what you're doing is a really good job, and that is getting the city out of silos, and that's not a criticism, but water, making buildings energy efficient saves water, and also helps with affordable housing. So it's this idea that when we do something that's right for one of your categories, it usually assists in multiple categories. But to Councilwoman Milhaven's point, we also have all the documents that you had pulled up, all these policies, and I appreciate that you're pointing to where, you know, both the projects we're working on, the successes we've had, the targets we're looking forward to, but pointing to those in existing documents, but kind of tying it together in a sustainability plan. So for water, yes, we have, there's a number of places in the new code where we conserve water. So there is some changes to the plumbing code that we conserve water. There's the IGCC, making the IGCC mandatory. There's additional water savings there. So your job is complex because we are doing a lot in a lot of different areas, and your job is to kind of point to those areas, but also then set targets where we go to the next level in all those areas. And there was one other point I wanted to make on water, but I can't remember, so I'll get to it when you, but good job. And you point out a lot of things. I like how you, well, again, you're kind of pulling things out of the silo, talking about everything we are doing and how we can get to the next level. I think that's so crucial, and how we can work together, the different departments. So it's pretty exciting.
Councilwoman Janik?
Thank you, Mayor. These are really broad topics with a lot of information and a lot of crossover. So as you address each one, will it be from top down, bottom up, or a combination of both?
Mayor, Councilwoman Janik, I mean, that's an excellent question, and I think that the question of how we prioritize these topics is something that we'll hope to explore more in an implementation section, which is, we gave a kind of a glimpse into that. I think that one model that I've seen that has worked well is to have implementation guidelines, or even I'm hoping to have like actual strategies and actions around implementation. But also, so City of Boston in their climate action plan has an equity implementation toolkit. And it is something that they've, I think ours could be broader than, it would incorporate equity, but it can include all of the ways that, or all of the factors that we would use to prioritize projects, have that be fairly explicit and be something that not only council would know that city staff were using as they were deciding kind of which to do first, but something we could share out with the community, because we do view this as a community-wide plan, and we hope that developers and small businesses and residents and others will join us in trying to achieve some of the goals and strategies in the plan, and that they can also use those as well.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
I like your format and clarity as you've gone through this outline, thinking that, you know, most citizens, again, we talked about engagement, how people of every age group and generation should be seeking more information, inputting more information. When we sat, we talked about legibility, how readable your report will be. I also see architect, Anthony Floyd out there. Is he part of the presentation, or is he listening? And tell me how engaged he has been with your program.
Absolutely, Mayor. So the staff team that we pulled together has been a sustainability steering team, and both Tim and Anthony and Sam Brown, also from the Office of Environmental Initiatives, were have always been very active in that. And so Anthony, I think, is here for general support. This is my first work study session for council, so, but I also think he's been obviously our subject matter expert for the built environment part of the plan as well.
Thank you. Then we're going to go on to heat mitigation, or
I just had one more slide,
Oh,
just to share a little bit on the timeline and next steps. That following this feedback, we'll be getting together a draft for public review, be getting more input from city departments and key stakeholders, and a second round of community meetings that I already mentioned. I'll be going in front of multiple other boards and commissions, including the Mayor's Youth Council, to get their feedback and thoughts on this as well, and hopefully bring a plan to council in December for adoption. And we'll schedule appropriate meetings with you in the interim.
Councilwoman Whitehead.
Yeah, so I do have some specific questions. I was waiting till the end, which came up quickly. So will the plan have itemized lists? And I think this is perhaps what Councilwoman Janik was referring to, of programs that the city is doing, and perhaps a link to where you can get, like, it might be in the Transportation Action Plan, but the actionable items that the residents ask for in these meetings, and I like that they also prioritized open space and trees. Will there be itemized lists? These are items that we are doing and their effectiveness. These are projects or programs or whatever that we're in work, like we're working on a tree canopy plan, for instance, and then targets of, will there be any targets for what we want to achieve in this sustainability document?
So, Mayor, Councilwoman Whitehead, the in Scottsdale section is where we anticipate adding some of what you're talking about. I call it context. So it would be a combination of why the topic is important and what is already happening. We view the strategies and action section, which you have a draft right now, as being kind of the core of the actions that we would be taking. Some of them are including targets. Some of them are areas we call for target setting. For example, under climate planning, we don't really have a greenhouse gas inventory, so it's wanted to start out with that increment of gathering some of that data. So it's, again, that was that type 2 of topics where we wanted to do that before we set some targets. I think we would see these more detailed plans with the heat mitigation plan and the energy plan having some more of those details and targets as well. Are there specific areas where you're looking?
Maybe I'll follow up with you afterwards. Yeah, I am. I'm looking at, like the tree canopy plan will be done. It will achieve this, and it'll be done at such and such. But let me follow up with you afterwards. So I think it was Brent Stockwell started a group, a sustainability group that involved a lot of the different staff members. That's still going on?
Yeah, that's
okay,
the
that's
steering
excellent.
team I mentioned, yeah.
That's wonderful. Okay, thank you. I'll follow up with you.
Okay.
Thank you. Proceed.
Okay. So I started with the successes on sustainability. I wanted, because of the visibility for heat, I felt like I had to start a little bit with what the problem is. It is a cooler day out there today, which is actually, I think, a perfect time to talk about heat mitigation planning. In the world of emergency management, they call that blue sky planning, that you should be taking the time, not during when the actual emergency is happening, to take a step back. As of earlier this month, there have been 153 confirmed heat deaths in Maricopa County. We're having fewer heat warning days than we did in 2020, but our nighttime low for June and July was 84.3. It averaged that, which is warmer than any year since 1950. And we know that temperatures in Arizona have already gone up 2.5% since 1900. To paraphrase a Scientific American headline, the hottest summer that we felt is likely one of the coolest ones of our future. So again, overlap in the presentations. As you all are aware, we partnered with ASU on a study identifying strategies for cooler Scottsdale. You received a briefing back in October, where we got input from you then about connecting this to water conservation needs, including transportation, and including it in the sustainability plan. What I just want to do is take a couple of minutes and do a recap, kind of for the record. I know it may have been a while. You know, by all measures, surface characteristics and temperatures are highly variable across the city. And surface characteristics is, you know, euphemism for trees versus asphalt versus number of buildings. The study focused on 3 growth areas mostly, in the Air Park, Old Town, and Old Scottsdale, and found that they have land temperatures that are 6 to 7 degrees higher than the rest of the city. Focusing on southern Scottsdale, which is where most of the hottest areas are, we know that tree density is approximately 50% less in most of these neighborhoods than in our most vegetated neighborhoods. So it shouldn't be a surprise that they're hotter. But when you add in income levels, you can see that these land surface temperatures decrease by more than a degree for each $10,000 increase in median per capita income for these census block areas of the research. Switching to radiant temperature, which is kind of the average temperature of the surfaces around us. It's what kind of gets radiated back to us. Again, it's not necessarily surprising that mature trees are cooler, that standing under a tree is cooler, and that even standing under a mature desert adapted tree is cooler, or being under a bus stop or other structured shade. What really struck me was how much cooler. You know, 55 degrees is a lot. And, you know, what this study gives us is that it took something that we knew and helped us quantify it, which really is going to be helping us as we develop this heat mitigation plan to, again, really target the work that we're going to be doing. Just some of the visuals from the plan, switching back to land surface temperature. It helps us visualize how and why it's hotter. So you can compare these 2 areas that have noticeable differences in tree and shade covering, and then also have the noticeable differences in temperature. When you go to switching back to radiant temperature, this looked at multiple different ground covers or sort of surface characteristics in areas where the air temperature was essentially the same. So that red line up and down tells you what the air temperature is. The bars give you the radiant temperature, and you can kind of see the arrows that, again, more pavement gives you more radiant, feels like a higher radiant heat. Sometimes, again, 35 to 60% higher. I realized after I turned these slides in that I have an acronym in there. I don't like to do that. So MRT is just median radiant temperature. So it's a short way of saying what, the heat that you feel. And then this is one of my favorite sets of the visuals of really looking at, these photos that show both the visual and the thermal, really kind of help you see those variations in temperatures at even that really small scale. And so, as we think about the experience of heat for individuals throughout their day, as opposed to just that single point of under this tree or on that sidewalk, these kinds of insights are going to be helpful for us as we, are people walking, how close are they to the Indian bin wash for what percentage of the day? How do we look again at that entire daily lived experience for people? For some of us, it's not that great. For me, in the heat of summer, I'm getting in my car, I'm driving a very short distance, getting into an underground, garage, going up to my office, and then reversing that. And I don't, until I walk my dog, I don't feel the 114-degree temperature. We know there are a lot of people whose jobs have them out in that heat of the sun a lot more, for a lot longer, and then maybe going back to houses that may or may not be as cool. And so this is data and it's photographs, but I still try to think of the people that are in them as we move forward. So the study also shared high-level recommendations. Again, you already saw these earlier. They also included some detailed strategies. I wasn't going to go over those. They're in the packet that you have. Again, these are recommendations from ASU around how do we increase the tree canopy, where do we increase the tree canopy on certain sides of buildings, reducing the land area that's darker, improving and increasing pedestrian shade amenities, again, focusing on frequently traveled walkways and around public transit. So now that we're taking the steps to sort of translate the study into a heat mitigation plan, one of the things that we wanted to do is to start getting input from the community on their priorities. And so extreme heat was one of the topics in the May community meetings where we got input from them. We've also have a new website where you can find the study, you can find the story map, and we have a place for people to share some of their thoughts around how well we're doing on heat, or what are the best strategies that we can use. We've already gotten some initial responses. We're going to keep this survey open. From the first 56%, 88% said it's very important. That's not very important and important. That's very important for the city to take action to reduce heat. At the same time, only about half say that Scottsdale's doing an average or better job on creating cool and comfortable places for pedestrians. So the surveys also have additional prompts. They have additional questions, including several open-ended responses that we'll be then incorporating into this as we move forward on the plan development. So our proposed framework for the plan draws from both the study, but also from a report from some University of Arizona researchers on planning for urban heat resilience. So we're looking at actually something a little broader than the study. We're looking at both mitigation and management with both short-term and long-term action. So the starting point is that pedestrian experience, which is what drove the study. But we wanted to sort of expand that to work to make sure that we're adding improving that, adding the trees and structured shade, but also guiding the choices between where do we put in trees, where do we put in structured shade. But also wanted to include other built environment strategies as well as management and response. I think, so again, a little bit more detail on what some of these examples are. That heat mitigation, it's absolutely urban forestry, trees and shade. It's that urban design around cool surfaces and even building design around shading, weatherization. Heat management then is the public health and that personal experience and preparedness. And then even sort of energy, which could kind of go in either category, but looking at the ways that can impact this. I wanted to stop here and see, as we're getting ready to kind of start working more with departments on making sure we understand fully what's already going on, sort of a scan for heat mitigation, and wanted to see what we're getting into direction or any elements that we might be missing.
Thank you, Councilwoman Whitehead.
So the challenge I always have, and I try to include in my newsletters, is what's causing the heat? It's hot, and it's getting hotter, so what's causing heat? And that's where I think there's a big gap in knowledge. Well, buildings that aren't built well, those are causing heat. So that's why we do energy efficient buildings, and that's why we're upgrading that. Air conditioners, why does that cause heat? Because when air conditioners come on, they pump hot air into the sky. And so we know that in Scottsdale, where people can afford to keep their air conditioners running, we have hotter night skies, and heat at night is what kills. So I think this big picture education is needed in our community. What else causes heat? Internal combustion engines, cars. That's a big source of heat in our cities. Concrete. So this, and Tim Connor's sort of an expert on this, as is Anthony. The materials we use, and again, that goes back to the IGCC, the International Green Construction Building Codes that we're considering. The type of materials we use to build buildings reduces urban heat, reduces utility bills. And so I think people say, oh, it's hot, let's plant a tree, but I think we have to really help educate people as to what is causing the heat, and that's where we need to make some changes. And that's my point about this, we can't be in a silo. What's using water? Energy. So the less energy we use, the more water we save. So we're just one big planet, and we can't work in silos. So thank you. So I just think that would be something some kind of educational page that shows kind of what you can do and what's causing, why is the heat rising, things like that. Thank you so much, Lisa. Keep going.
Mayor, Councilwoman, I completely agree. I mean, one of the things that I think we've done, especially in this city, a really good job, people know what they can do to save water. They may not always do it because, we all make choices, and I don't think we've given people enough of an idea of what they can do. And I do thank you. We will certainly make sure that's included in the plan.
Councilwoman Caputi.
Just continuing on that topic, I tend to agree. I think that we have a tendency to put all these great things down on paper, and we know the good things that we need to do. We're talking about it, and yet for some reason it doesn't always translate, as you said, into implementation. So we do know the things that cause heat, and I know as I read through this document, it talked about doing things to prevent the heat, like decreasing exposed asphalt, building underground parking lots instead of always having it at surface level. Right? It talked about increasing walkability, having live, work, play projects. It mentioned having workforce housing by transit. Those are great ideas. It would be excellent if we actually read our documents and then, implemented them. There was a mention about economic development and vitality. I think having economic and vitality requires having housing for employees, right? So we have a housing problem. We have an affordable housing problem. We're not really addressing it. We're doing a lot of things that instead increase the heat island effects. ASU, I know we keep mentioning them, they just had a panel discussion, I think it was yesterday, I was reading about it, talking about how long commutes are a huge contributor of the heat island effect. So continually addressing the issue of affordable housing is, of course, just continuing to, worsen this problem. I think, again, we really need to think about doing what we say we're going to do. And it ties back into the previous work study, too, because we talked about 18 to 34-year-olds sort of feeling like they don't have a voice in our city. They don't have a voice, they don't have a place to live, right? I mean, I definitely think that's something we need to think about. In fact, in your definition of sustainability, I think there was something that mentioned future generations. So I think we need to be thinking forward a lot as we start to talk about these issues. One last thing, there was something in the document about creating a fund for new affordable housing. I don't know if you were part of that. It was inside, there were a whole bunch of strategies for doing stuff.
Mayor, Councilwoman, I think that may have been one of the suggested actions from the community meetings.
I would like to definitely have more of a conversation on that, so make a note. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Just some other, let's say, guidance or what we're looking for. Obviously, transportation, vehicles idling is a major problem and a heat generator. The energy, the tie between energy and water conservation. But I think also we're going to be approaching, because we're in a Tier 2A shortage. Tier 2B will require us to take action as council with our authority on some ordinance levels. But what I'd like to point out is that, for instance, we are encouraging people to remove lawn, yet at the same time, when you look at where Scottsdale is cool, it's in the public lawn or the greenbelt areas where grass actually prevents erosion. Grass is part of a tremendous system of drainage and storm drainage control. We saw that with the monsoons. Essentially, the Bermuda or the grass kept the ground from just racing downhill and so forth. So on one hand, we are asking private property residents to give up their turf, and at the same time, I see the value of course, having public parks where we have community ownership in cooler areas. I talk to people all the time that say they take an hour and a half in the morning every day to go around Chaparral Park or out in the trails when it's cooler. And so we're actually kind of redistributing our sensible cooler spaces and taking ownership of that. Once in a while I get an email saying, why does the city have, certainly we're reducing or eliminating grass and medians, but at the same time, why did we have green parks, or why did we have, there's a trade-off there, and I believe that most people believe those are necessary amenities, and we're asking at the same time to compensate for turf removal or getting a pool cover and so forth. So it's an interesting kind of overplay ourselves. Outside in our civic lawn, we're going to have a great opportunity for a cooler, campus right from here to Main Street. Now, if you go to other civic plazas, they're practically all concrete. And that's just the way they were, architects were doing it in those days. So that's where I think we're going to have to be weighing the cost of water, the value of water in a community culture that I think is really part of our identity as well. We certainly don't want to waste water and have it shooting off into the Hayden Road, right? Okay, Councilwoman Whitehead, please.
Well, I'll tag on to that, and that's a good point. I think if you took the temperature, it's true that you have that map on the green belt, which is very green with grass, but any open space. So I think it would be interesting to have a map of the preserve or any open space. And I also think I learned this by being on city council that in order to get the grass removal dollars from the city, you actually have to keep your yard cool with plant coverage. You can't just put cement or rock, so you do have to have trees and plant coverage to get it. So I was glad to learn that, and I'm in the process of doing it. So anyway, thanks, Mayor.
Well, at this point, you have a closing, I believe, or?
I'm going the wrong way.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I went there. Shane, can you rescue me?
We were so close.
I know.
Thank you.
There we go. Just did one last slide just on a few next steps that we're going to be getting continued public input around the Cooler Scottsdale plan. We'll be getting more input at the October meetings, and as I mentioned, the scan of kind of what's going underway, and hope to bring back some components of the plan by May or June next year. That seemed a logical time for a heat mitigation plan. So may not have everything completely, worked out at that point, but hope to bring some real some next milestones.
Thank you, Councilwoman Whitehead.
Sorry, one more question. I think this is for Mr. Murphy. Where are we on this? Some of these items are moving forward ahead of the plan, like the tree canopy plan. We have a tree categorizing how many trees we have, and any news on that?
Mayor Ortega, Councilwoman Whitehead, members of the council, we have around 20,000 trees currently in our tree inventory. We are working right now with Salt River Project on some trees that are conflicting with their power corridor, and with that we get a replacement for every tree that's removed. We get 3 trees back, and so we are going to start that project with them in October, and we can put those in any of the areas where Salt River Project's power is. So we will replace those trees and put something in there that is what they call right tree, right spot. And then we are going to put some additional trees in some of the areas within the parks as well. So our inventory should grow substantially with that practice.
I'm wondering about the tree canopy plan. This all started with the downtown project. Do we have a plan for downtown? I know there's mixed messaging from merchants, but.
I think currently with the trees we have in the downtown, we are trying to preserve what we have down there. Some of those other ideas that we've brought forward to you, some other plans that Second Street, for example, was something like that we had talked about. We would implement more trees into that area and certainly try to address that, have walkable space.
Okay, well, thank you, Bill. And thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Great. At this point, we are concluded with the work study item 1 and 2. Accordingly, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second. Please record your vote.
Second.
We are adjourned. Enjoy your evening.